Hello, welcome to the Rogue Council. We'll be talking Revenge of the Sith tonight. This is our third movie recap, and our first one with our new co-host David, or Xanatos1138. How you doing, David?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Hard to complain. But yeah, I'm excited. Roddy, let's do introductions. Roddy, I'll let you start.
Hey everybody, I'm Roddy. I like to talk about Hayao Miyazaki things on YouTube, Hidetaka Miyazaki things on YouTube, and Star Wars here. You can find me at HigoToMosque27, and I'm excited to talk about this movie.
David, where can we find you?
So I am Xanatos1138 on primarily TikTok, but I'm on Twitter, a little bit of Instagram. Want to get back into Twitch. So pretty much anywhere there's social media, that is my name. I primarily talk about Star Wars, Marvel, pop culture stuff.
Nice. I'm ForwardIntoTheBlack on TikTok. That's pretty much all I use now. I still have a Twitch account, which some people might be tuning into soon. But yeah, let's kind of get into this. We all kind of watched this together 2 nights ago, I guess it was. I'm sure this is number. We don't even remember what number this is for. I don't remember which number this is for me. How many times I rewatched this movie? But what is your overall impression of me rewatching it this most recent time?
I mean, this movie is probably the hardest one for me to watch, like, overall, because, like, I don't like watching Anakin turn. Like, that's probably the hardest part for me to watch. Because it's, it's sad, it's tragic, it's what happens and he becomes Darth Vader. But like that middle part is always tough, and then afterwards it gets, better. But I did notice a couple of different things during the rewatch, and it still kind of sits in the middle of my rankings. Nothing really changed much.
Okay. Yeah. Roddy, what about you? How was it this time around?
I'll say the two main things for me that were different. Actually understanding that the Jedi and the Sith, in my opinion, are the best representations of fallen beings and guardian beings in fantasy and entertainment. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a deeper appreciation for Star Wars, and also how this is such a good fall path story.
Yeah,
Anakin's fall. It really nails things that every single person struggles with.
Yes.
In a very dramatic, massive way. Yeah.
I think, for me, I am on my first watch through of the Clone Wars, and it changes the film dramatically and drastically at the same time. It changes the film completely when you watch the Clone Wars, and it is. I still think it is the most emotional Star Wars film. That you kind of see a lot of things, and we'll get into it. But yeah, you're right. That fall of Anakin, it hits in so many difficult places. But yeah, I will say that watching the Clone Wars, or almost being done with the Clone Wars at this point, being halfway through season 6, this movie again was in the middle, the upper middle of my, if I were to rank it, and now it's closer towards the bottom. Especially rewatching Attack of the Clones and having Attack of the Clones with Book of Boba Fett, and just the context that adds. And that's what I love about that's with the rankings of Star Wars. They're very arbitrary and abstract, but they're so dynamic. A new piece of Star Wars can come out and completely change your perspective on a movie. And that's what happened to me with Attack of the Clones, where that really got a boost for me. But yeah, let's jump into it. I will read the title crawl for this movie. It starts with war. the worst opening to any of the Star Wars title crawls. War.
Yeah, I always thought that was a little cheesy.
It's bad. It's fun, but I'm like, man, that you could have just taken it out. I'm not even like change it. That doesn't need to be there. It's called Star Wars. It's just like I want to move. Like episode 10 has to start with space.
That's pretty great.
But war. The Republic is crumbling under attacks by the ruthless Sith Lord, Count Dooku. There are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. In a stunning move, the fiendish droid leader, General Grievous, has swept into the Republic capital and kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine, leader of the Galactic Senate. As the Separatist droid army attempts to flee the besieged capital with their valuable hostage, 2 Jedi Knights lead a desperate mission to rescue the captive Chancellor. And I know, Roddy, you want to talk about this because of one line in this this title crawl that really changes for me, especially with the Clone Wars, and that is there are heroes on both sides. So yeah, Roddy, let's talk about that before we get into the scenes of kind of like we'll take the Clone Wars little chunk right here and kind of maybe throw it in there.
Cool. Yeah, my that was the final note I made in our Google Doc, and I was hesitant to do so. That's why I said talk about that question mark. So let's do it. I mean, any conflict where there's two dualistic, polarized sides trying to annihilate each other or prove each other wrong. I mean, from a certain point of view, especially if you understand that line and have watched Clone Wars, both sides think they're the good guys.
Yeah.
And the Separatists actually have a lot of good reasons. And the Republic obviously just cares about stability. So that implies a lot, right? So what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, no one goes to war thinking they're the bad guy. Never in the history of history has that happened. Where someone's like, you know what? I want to be the bad guy in this war. But yeah, it's you don't in the film. I don't think you see that. Whereas Count Dooku is clearly evil. General Grievous is clearly evil. We don't have any separatist leaders in this film that lead us to think like, hey, the Republic's doing something that maybe it shouldn't do, or maybe it's meddling a little bit too much over here. We do know, like from the fourth wall perspective, we have Emperor Palpatine or Chancellor Palpatine. Darth Sidious is the master puppeteer on this whole thing. So we do see there are villains on both sides, but we don't get that. We don't know Mina Bonteri at this point. And I think that's interesting that it's in the title crawl, but not in the movie, which is interesting. And I think it could have definitely dealt with that. I don't know, David. What's your take on that?
Well, if you look at it from just the separatists, like say for instance, there could be certain people that consider Dooku a hero, probably because some details have been left out, or even Newt Gunray among his people. There are probably a lot of like-minded people among the Neimoidians. They're like, oh yeah, he's a savior of our people. He's going to stop the war because, like, you know, he thought that the war was over. All they wanted was peace, and that's what they were going for. But they were all lied to.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because we're pretty much right at the beginning. We're introduced to yet another villain within this film. But yeah, and we'll kind of jump into a little bit more of that. But let's kind of just start with the movie. We pan down from the title screen to this epic space battle, which is, anyone who knows me, this always gets me going, is seeing any type of like spaceship and capital ship fight. We are treated to a like nonstop, no cut fly through with Obi-Wan and Anakin and their ETA-2s, which are awesome. It's just like, this is the last movie, you know, when this movie came out, this is the last movie before we get to A New Hope. and we're really seeing the connections with the ETA-2s that are just TIE fighters, and the good guys are flying the TIE fighters now. And then we have we start seeing the ARC-70s. One of the clone pilots says, "Open the S-foils," and you're just like, "Oh man, this is it. We're getting into the new era."
Right.
And then we see essentially what look like Z-95 headhunters kind of in the background, which are proto X-wings. So this is really cool. We're introduced to a couple new droids. We get the buzz droids that show up quite often in the Clone Wars. And this is all an attempt to obviously rescue Chancellor Palpatine. And through this very epic space battle, we go into one of the Separatist ships. Obi-Wan and Anakin basically crash land into this ship. But one thing that I'll kind of talk about here is we have this very drastic shift from Attack of the Clones, where it was this teacher-student relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and now it's borderline buddy cop.
Yeah.
So I'll just ask you guys this. When you guys watched this movie, I assume we all watched this before the Clone Wars was a thing. How did you even notice the difference between Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship in Episode 2 versus Episode 3, or is it just something that you just kind of went along with?
I more so went along with it.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, it's something watching it now. I'm like, this is so different. Like they are best friends now, and it shows versus how it was in the last episode. But I thought that was so interesting. But when they crash land, we are introduced to our third villain of the prequel trilogy. We had Darth Maul, then Count Dooku, and now we're introduced to the cybernetic monstrosity that is General Grievous. And something that was brought up to me is that there are three villains that represent the three stages of Darth Vader, which I think is really interesting. Maul is the emotional side of Anakin Skywalker. Count Dooku is the fallen Jedi that is Anakin Skywalker, and General Grievous is the machine monster that is Darth Vader.
That's very cool. Because
Yeah.
that's Palpatine's Anakin is thus Palpatine's amalgamation of his three little covert apprentices.
Hello, Harith Productions. I love the opening for Revenge of the Sith. It's by far one of the best aspects of the prequel trilogy. This has the strongest opening of all of the prequel trilogies, in my opinion. It's really good.
Yeah, it's great.
But so we're introduced into this villain, and I know this was a huge point of contention when the prequels were coming out, is they couldn't focus on a villain. You had Maul, Dooku, and Grievous. It was just a new villain every single movie. Palpatine's obviously there in the background. But we are brought into basically Obi-Wan and Anakin making their way through the Separatist ship to where Palpatine is being held. And this is something that we see, for me watching it this time, was interesting because Dooku comes up behind him. We see Christopher Lee do a fantastic front flip, something someone his age should not be doing.
It's mandatory. He had to.
Yeah, it's flair. Dooku's all about flair and his exquisite pajamas. But this scene in particular, from the moment that they walk into the room with Palpatine to the moment that they leave, the manipulation and the just evilness of Palpatine really shows in a very overt way that we haven't really gotten in the prequel trilogy. So if any of you guys want to chime in on that, this whole section, this is the fight against Dooku, and obviously where he is killed by Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, when Palpatine is trying to get Anakin to leave Obi-Wan behind,
Yeah.
and he says, "Leave him, or we'll never make it." And Anakin says, "His fate will be the same as ours," and it actually was.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's fate dying in a Death Star was the same as both of them.
Interesting.
Yes.
I
Yep.
never noticed that.
It was probably some TikTok that brought it up, but yeah, I noticed that of like when I was just watching it, and I was like, yeah, they all die on a Death Star. But what I think is so interesting, and it's the good fan in me wants to say that this is just the power of the dark side especially with the context of the Clone Wars and the adventures that Obi-Wan and Anakin went on that involved Chancellor Palpatine in one way or another, and to have Chancellor Palpatine just so nonchalantly say, leave him.
Yeah.
Like, leave Obi-Wan Kenobi, like one of the most quintessential generals of the Clone Wars, the war that he's orchestrating, and he's just like, leave him. And Anakin disregards this. He obviously picks up Obi-Wan, but he disregards the statement that's being said. Hello, Luke. I had no idea you liked this movie.
I think.
Go ahead, Roddy.
I think that displays Anakin's delusion and his mind control under Palpatine's influence in a very, very huge way. And that's my comment on what you just brought up. I have one thing to say about this scene that's something else. But,
yeah, say it.
Well, something we don't see in Anakin / Vader, which we see in Dooku, is Dooku's awareness of that he's been used as a tool and a pawn. And that is, in my opinion, the perfect representation of, yes, Palpatine is a mass manipulator. Look at someone become aware of what has been done to their mind.
Yeah, I think with Dooku especially is when Anakin has the lightsabers on Dooku's throat, and Chancellor Palpatine just says, "Kill him."
Yeah.
Dooku snaps to Palpatine, and it all hits him at that very moment of like, oh, this was the plan the whole time. Like I'm counting. It's like we see this when Obi-Wan is captured with Anakin and the Chancellor coming up. It's like, we're smarter than this. Like Dooku had that same moment.
He does.
And the lightsaber, he's like, I'm smarter than this. How did this happen?
Yep.
And it's just how like vile and vicious Palpatine is. Hey, Carter, welcome to the Rogue Council. Thank you for tuning in.
What's up, everybody?
And Luke saying Anakin doesn't realize until it's too late. Everyone doesn't realize until it's too late, and that's what's so good about Palpatine. Brian is not smarter than this, unfortunately. But so they are escaping. Anakin is carrying Obi-Wan on his back. They get captured. We have the great lines. Wait, we're smarter than this, which is I think is a great line from Obi-Wan. This leads me to like this film has the most personality and most character of all of the prequel trilogy. Like it has that energy to it that I think is what draws so many people to this movie. It feels like that original trilogy because there's the quips, there's the those fun moments of like, it's like, oh, that's no moon, that's a super galactic space weapon. You have these moments kind of coming in. But one thing that once they get captured, they're brought to Grievous, and one thing that people have definitely brought up, what I think is really interesting about the Clone Wars, is how carefully they made Anakin never meet Grievous in that 7-season arc for the line of like, "Oh, you're shorter than I expected."
So careful.
It's so.
Do you know how careful it is? It's so precise that I actually thought that was a plot hole. You corrected me.
It's not. Like there are moments when Grievous is on a spaceship, right? Anakin's right here, so there's no way they would even know the height discrepancy between them. It's a bad perspective. And
that was just something I was willing to accept as like an okay mistake. I'm not being observant enough, I guess.
It's almost like when they're fighting Dooku and Anakin says, "My powers have doubled since the last time we met, Count." And I'm like, "Wait, was that yesterday? Because you guys have fought before."
It's funny because like we do see this like in from episode 2, the end of episode 2 to the beginning of episode 3. There's clearly time has passed. People have grown much better facial hair, and people have better hairstyles now. So clearly time has passed. That's how we know. And from the movie standpoint, it makes sense of like time has passed. The war is coming to an end, and yeah, it makes sense in that situation. But the amount of times that Dooku is involved in conflict between Obi-Wan and Anakin in that show, it's like, yeah, where are we at the doubling point? Which Dragon Ball Z power level are we talking about? But yeah, so everything kind of goes awry. They basically are setting the Separatist ship to crash into Coruscant. And David, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed this. As they're sending the Separatist ship to crash, they say, reverse the thrusters. And we see those thrusters where the engines are facing the planet, and it boosts that. And the only thing I could think of was The Expanse. Like, this is how all the ships approach anything, is they flip backwards and put on these reverse thrusters that slowly bring them in. And I was like, this is like the one physics thing in Star Wars that actually makes sense. It's a Separatist ship with reverse thrusters going into a planet. I was like, this is great. But yeah, so they have this very dramatic, very like visually like pleasing, but it's obviously a very violent thing of this huge capital ship crashing into a planet. And everyone makes it out just fine, and they are making their way through Coruscant, and they're going to go to the Senate to talk about what just happened because the Chancellor is obviously back. And this is where we see the first interaction between Padme and Anakin, where Padme reveals that she's pregnant, which obviously kind of in a very strange way is very similar to how the ships are changing in the very beginning to look more like they did in this. Everything is kind of coming together. Padme's pregnant. Padme's going to give birth to a child or children. This has got to be Luke or Leia, if not both, obviously. So I think it's cool how we see this. But the one thing I noticed about this scene kind of is it's something that gets tossed away, I think. One of those like, oh, Hayden Christensen can't act thing is his reaction to her being pregnant. I think is very realistic of like, oh my God. Like, not even like, you're a senator, I'm a Jedi, this is bad. Like, oh, this is just how a lot of people react to realizing that they and another person are going to have a kid. And he collects himself, and he's like, this is wonderful, this is a blessing. And it's like we start to see like there's a maturity kind of happening with Anakin already. So I don't know, how do you guys feel about like this first interaction, because we do get a lot of Padme and Anakin interactions?
I think it's my 2 cents here will be I think Hayden Christensen learned a lot and improved his craft by the time this was shot, and it's portrayed in the film. Padme and Anakin were in a tense situation, and I think it's a very interesting start to the film. I don't think it's cheesy overtness like, oh, it's Luke and Leia, like easy, and it's like, no, it's not easy. It's like, it's actually proper. I think everyone knows where this is headed.
Yes, it's very breadcrumby. We're leading the trail to get to A New Hope, which I think is really, really interesting. And yeah, the one thing that I think a lot of people have like questioned is there no birth control in space yet? Have they? This galaxy skip over that step?
Well, there's no bras in space, apparently.
No bras in space, according to George Lucas, and no birth control. Because like that was the one thing that I would maybe say is like the politician and the Jedi didn't think of any type of contraception while they're doing this thing. Okay, that's fine. But yeah, so we move forward, and we start to see the Separatists. We see Grievous arriving on Utapau, which is a super cool planet. And we see the same Separatists from Geonosis. We see the Techno Union, we see the Munes, all gathering here, and we start to kind of learn more about the Separatist plot. And again, kind of like I'll probably bring up the Clone Wars a decent amount, especially since you guys have actually finished this and probably watched it more than one time. With the knowledge of like, and we'll get to this probably a little bit with the Plagueis section, like seeing the arc that involves the Munes and the Banking Clan and all of these little background characters that were fleshed out, like not even this time, but maybe the time you watched Revenge of the Sith afterwards, like what is your overall like post Clone Wars view of this movie?
I get more out of it from like, you know, I would suggest watching episode 3 again once you finish Clone Wars, because a lot of the ending is right alongside episode 3's events. So like you get to see what Ahsoka, you know, what's happening with her and all that stuff. Like I got a lot out of that. As far as the Techno Union Army and all that, I didn't connect fully with that still for it to change much.
Yeah. I mean, Roddy, how do you feel? Because I know you're the one that's tried to get me to watch the Clone Wars for I think 15 years now.
Yeah, well, I think Clone Wars, like you said, we'll get into Plagueis later, but I think Clone Wars and any prequel content being integrated into someone's mind going into this, for myself, what episode 3 is, it's the representation of the total chaos and confusion that happens at the climax of a manufactured conflict. You know, a micromanaged manufactured conflict where almost every party involved is like Yoda and sometimes Palpatine himself are both like, I don't really know what to do. Just winging it. You know,
there's a lot of it in this that I see, and I think even in the Clone Wars, where you're right, where things don't really go according to plan. Like there is this grand master plan going on, but like even the arc that I got to with the Fives arc, where they learn about the chips, of it's just like this is not supposed to happen yet, and that's a great arc, and it's one of those things that it adds to me. It adds so much to, like, we'll get to it in a little bit, but it adds to those scenes when Sidious is really revealing himself, and you're just like, this is all coming together for him. But yeah, we'll move on kind of to real quick. We go to Padme's estate, and we kind of have like the visions that are starting to occur, but we more so see this like very romantic, very intimate situation with Padme and Anakin, where she's honestly just playing with him and saying things like, "Love has blinded you." I'm not actually, you know, she's getting older. She's now pregnant, and it's just like, you know, very very standard conversations between a couple of like, "There's no way you find me this attractive," and she's starting to play with him, and I love her characterization in this of Anakin is still at this point trying to be this ultra romantic, very clumsy partner that has never done this before, and Padme is basically, it's like a cat with a string, you know. You're just playing with it, and it's just like, it's so good. I really enjoy Padme in this movie, but I think that's a fun.
That's accurate, in my opinion.
Yeah, kind of. We'll jump to the next scene, which I think will probably have a really, really good talking point, and this is Anakin talking to Yoda about his premonition. And I've always loved Yoda, but I remember distinctly this scene kind of making Yoda my favorite of all the Jedi. And because he's so good. He's so not just like good at what he does. He's not like a proficient Jedi. I mean, he is, but like he's just so good at being who he is as just a being and a Jedi and a teacher. Everything that he sets out to be, he's so good at it. Because he tells Anakin like it's okay. We will lose people. And this Yoda's 850 by this point.
Mhm.
How many people has he lost in his lifetime? You know, we always say that, you know, Obi-Wan's the tragic character because he's lost someone. But when we look at characters like Chewbacca and Yoda, who just have the longer lifespans and how many people they lost, like they lost everyone. And he still has this notion of like, he's like, you should rejoice in someone joining in the Force. You know, you shouldn't miss them. You should be happy that they are where they are. And he just, to me, has always exuded this like higher level of consciousness than pretty much every Jedi on the Council. So yeah, I mean, David? Let me know your thoughts on Yoda in this scene.
It was a good scene. You could already tell that Anakin was not going to listen when he put his head down. It's like it was good advice to a point, but he also wasn't giving Yoda the entirety of the details because, you know, Padme's a secret. And there was actually a Clone Wars episode where I think he gave Ahsoka better advice. And I'm just like, why couldn't you tell that to Anakin? I think that would have been better. But they probably, the Jedi Council as a whole probably didn't trust Anakin either at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of factors are tainting the experience for Anakin.
Yeah. To one point you said, I always joke that Padme and Anakin are the Jedi Council's worst kept secret. Like everyone knows. We're just ignoring it. Roddy, how do you feel about Yoda in the scene, or just the interaction with Yoda and Anakin?
I feel there's a lot of deep truth in this scene about fear-based mindsets and attaching yourself to others, and really regarding his Yoda's higher consciousness. I agree, and I think we'll talk about it in the next few bullet points. I'll mention this in further detail, but I think he understood what was about to transpire to the Republic by this point. I think he did. And not that he's a future teller or anything, but he sensed something boiling to the surface. And in terms of Jedi, the Guardian beings, it's, I don't know, his melancholy and like solemn demeanor in this scene while talking to Anakin and maintaining like joy is very indicative of the higher level consciousness you talked about. And I think it goes without saying anything. I think it's interesting that the Jedi eventually merged with the Republic and sort of had this unspoken attachment to the fate of the galactic government, which I feel is sort of the antithesis of being a detached Guardian, which is sort of why I think Yoda has this ability to just, stand through the entire storm of what happens.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say too much. I think we all touched on the vital things.
Yeah, it's something kind of like what you said. I think Yoda knew at the very end of Attack of the Clones, this is not going to end well, for his friends and his allies or for the Republic. And I think he just stands with everyone he cares about through all of it, and is going to try to guide everyone as best he can. But this leads us going into pretty much like the next scene of Anakin basically trying to get on the Jedi Council, kind of on behest of the Chancellor. And we get the very famous interaction of Mace Windu and Anakin of basically saying, you are on this council, but we do not grant you the title of master, which Anakin he does throw like a mini temper tantrum in front of the council. And it's one of those things, kind of like the Padme is the worst kept secret, is everyone knows where this is going now. And everyone senses it and everyone feels it. And we're already past, we're past Attack of the Clones, we're past the Clone Wars. This is the end of the war. And I think there's definitely a discomfort and a concern with Anakin, like with every single member of the council. And I think the one thing I noticed about this scene is the council no longer trusts Palpatine. Not because he's a Sith Lord, because he's making decision after decision that doesn't align with the Jedi. And this is what drives me crazy when people say like, oh, the Jedi are the true villains. And I'm like, they did so much as much as they could to like do the right thing, and it just never went their way. But yeah, I think this scene's really interesting. I love Samuel L. Jackson in this scene nails it, and just gives him that like, you need to sit down.
Yeah. Yup.
Yeah, I mean, whoever wants to chime in on this scene, because I think this is just a fantastic little bit.
There's a lot of also like non-canon things that I found perspective in, like the movie novelization, some of the old like 2003 Clone Wars stuff. But in this in particular, in the novelization, there's a part where you're kind of in the perspective of Mace Windu, and he's like, there was a love that I had, and it's the love for the Republic. So like he's very aligned with the ideals of the Republic, very like, so you get more characterization from him. But as far as this scene, I think Mace is completely right in what he does. I don't think there's a single point where Mace is necessarily incorrect.
Never.
Yeah.
Mace is never wrong. Which I love about his character. But yeah, it's the one thing I'll say about this scene that's not very like introspective is this scene in particular just makes me think of Snakes on a Plane. He's looking at Anakin like, get this motherfucking knight off my motherfucking council. Roddy, if you want to talk about anything in this scene.
Yeah, I think you both covered most of the importance, like the council sensing where everything's going, and their little secret about, what they're sensing and everything. And in Clone Wars seasons 5 and 6, I think, when they find out what happened to Sifo Dyas, I mean, that just starts amplifying their whole questioning about what's actually the fate of the Republic right now. Yeah. But what I want to talk about is, you noted Anakin's fixation on title, not a responsibility, is so good. I mean, I think about Kreia talking to Atris about, you've made the concept of a Jedi your identity. Mm-hmm. You made it the title your identity. I'm not a Sith. I'm Kreia. She says something along these lines. I'm not quoting. Anakin was identifying with becoming a master, and he was lusting after it. Like he was so obsessed with this being better, just being better. And that has to do with the title versus responsibility, because if he just understood what was happening and where his place was in it, I'll take this is cool. I'll take a seat, like I should be grateful for everything I do have, which is a hell of a lot, and the stakes right now are high.
And I think this scene is so interesting. I think his reaction is so interesting because of the origin of Anakin, like this young boy who was essentially born into slavery on Tatooine, had little to nothing in his life except for his mother, and now he's been given the greatest like reward that like he could possibly ever imagine, and that's to be part of the Jedi Council. And again, like he's fixating on this, like, I'm not a master, and it's like, you are a part of the council. You have the decision. You now can make the decisions that you've always wanted to, and especially with the Clone Wars, the frustration he felt the entire the entire span of the war where the council was telling him stuff that he didn't agree with, and that whenever he wanted to go do something with Ahsoka or he wanted to go work with Padme, whatever it may have been, and the council was like, no, 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 no. He now has this ability to take that control, and he's throwing a temper tantrum. And again, at this point, the dark side is just like creeping into him, and he can't see these things anymore. And I think this scene is so good.
Yeah, and every bit of it. I think he was 23 in Revenge of the Sith, and that's still, he's a knight, and he's now like pretty much on the council without being a master, but he's still 2 years younger than Obi-Wan as a Padawan was, doing all this stuff. So I mean, he's focusing on the negative.
Yeah, Obi-Wan even says like a knight has never even been considered for being on the council. Like this is a great honor.
Yeah.
Like and it's just one of those things which is like, yeah, it's so interesting to see that shift. But this kind of goes into the next scene, which I know is very special to Roddy and I, where Anakin goes to meet with the Chancellor, and he goes to the Mon Calamari Ballet, which is an awesome visual spectacle. But he has a very interesting conversation with Palpatine. And one thing I know, before we get into this, probably what is about to be a long conversation, is we've seen Palpatine be a very kind and generous chancellor from episode 1 to episode 2. And when he's like, oh, Anakin, it's so good to see you, it's so good to see you, and then he just says, leave us.
Yeah.
And everyone gets up. And he's never acted that way before. And it's just one of those things. It's something that Anakin misses, and something I missed. Is it's just like he's changing, and he's being more overt about who he really is. Because like episode 1 and 2, Palpatine would have never done that. It would have been a request, not an order. But this is where he asks the very famous quote, which has spawned so much stuff over the years: "Is have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" And Roddy, if you want to start this one off, I'll let you have that opportunity because I think you've read Plagueis more than anyone.
Yeah, I've read it a lot, and I don't like the Sith. I don't like the Jedi. But Plagueis' story is fascinating, and it has to do with something that I wanted to touch on in the last section, but I'm going to relate it to this section.
Okay.
So don't worry. They say, so the prophecy says, right? And it's a prophesied one, right? Prophesied redeemer that will bring balance. And I had the idea the other day, like, what if the one was the merging of light and dark, which cancels both out in its balance? What if the one is that? Or, you know, so the prophecy says, it's misunderstood, perhaps. Or if the chosen savior was just possibly a Sith sorcery trick to obfuscate the Jedi's sight. We'll never know, but something that Plagueis tried to do was tap the deepest strata of the Force, which to me, I can't imagine it any other way than total, you know, balance and deep transcendence, like maintained and grounded. And Palpatine, what you touched on was, you know, he never had that leave us, you know, in on screen at least, that caliber before. And he's starting to let his cloak fade. Something Plagueis taught him was how to bask himself in the mundane. And I think that's very interesting you note that. And I think all I'll say about Plagueis is, if you haven't read James Luceno's Plagueis, Darth Plagueis, you should check it out.
It's one of my favorites.
I don't want to taint that character too much, but there's a full novel about Palpatine's master and their rising to power. And Palpatine, I could say a lot. All I really have to say that I noted, I would like to ask you guys what you think about this. It seems like Palpatine's playing with food. Anakin.
Yes.
Playing with food. And you know, I made a note. It's sort of obvious, but Anakin's under his total control already, and yeah. I wanna hear you
Yes.
guys talk.
Yeah. David, if you wanna chime in on anything Plagueis or anything Roddy said.
So I've not finished Plagueis. I mean, I'd have to start it over again because it's been a while. I couldn't get into it, but I didn't get very far anyway. And I did notice, like, this is the movie, like, before Palpatine turns into the Emperor entirely anyway. Like, the first part is when he says "do it" to Anakin killing Dooku.
Yep.
And then when he says "leave us," that's a complete tonal shift. That's like on purpose, and he's like letting his true self bleed through a couple of, and then you see that shift when they go to confront him. Like, then he just drops everything,
Yep, the gig's up, you know.
Yeah.
And kind of like what Roddy said with he's playing with food, 100%, because I think even Plagueis wasn't expecting Anakin to just, like, he was expecting a fight, you know, and Anakin just submits. And this is something that not this in particular, but just the scenario is definitely touched on within Plagueis, and the difficulties I think Plagueis had with Palpatine. It's just Plagueis was so unbelievably dedicated and committed to the dark side and to learning all of the mysteries of the Force and creating life through the Force. Kind of like, yes, he's very dedicated to the dark side, but is doing things that aren't necessarily what we have this understanding that would be what, like, the light side. Like, we think of like Force mending and Force healing was stuff that Plagueis was experimenting with. And his intentions, I think, really determine his character. But yes, it's just when we see the do it, when we see the leave us, and then even in the Clone Wars, when we see him, what we are left to assume is him revealing his entire plot to Fives. And we see him doing things with the Zillo Beast in the Clone Wars. This is stuff that Plagueis would have, like, cut his head off for. It's just like Plagueis had every little detail planned out for the Galactic Empire. And we see this decay almost of the Sith Lords, where Bane set everything up, right? And I know this is not canon, but hush, I don't care. Still matters to me. This was a grand plan, and Plagueis was the penultimate solution for this. And Palpatine was tearing it apart. And what I think we see from literally episode 1 until Rise of Skywalker is the failure of Palpatine. Which I think is so interesting, that we do get this one line that spawned a novel and spawned a whole theory of everything. Which, I mean, is what Star Wars does best. Is one line, one side character spawns a whole thing. The prequels, the Clone Wars, came from "I fought with your father in the Clone Wars." We got 7 seasons of a cartoon out of that one line.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that we do see. Had Plagueis, maybe picked a better apprentice, maybe this is Plagueis failing. The Galactic Empire would have been the new Eternal Empire. And Palpatine screwed it up.
Bane had, like, the Bane trilogy I did read, and he set up like a rigid structure of, like, there can only be 2 at all times. That ensures the next apprentice, when they take over, is stronger than the master, and then it builds.
Yes.
And then Palpatine sort of tried to cheat the system because he wanted all of it. Like, he wanted to be
over and over. Yeah. We had Maul, we had Dooku, we had there's and then Dooku has Asajj, and Maul has Savage. Like, everyone is cheating, and this is why it doesn't work in the end. And it's like, do we all just go back to Palpatine? Like, you screwed up everything for the Sith. Which, hey, good for Palpatine. Everyone lived happily ever after.
Right. That's the funny part too, because Palpatine was literally, in
The
my
savior
opinion,
of
the
the galaxy.
opposite of he was the accidental savior of the galaxy, and he was the opposite of Plagueis, because Plagueis's delusion was putting all his trust and transparency in the hands of a sociopath,
Yeah.
Palpatine. So, I mean, it's sort of funny when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like Plagueis' problem was like arrogance based in his ability, and so was Palpatine's. But like they did the opposite. Palpatine tried to have like 1,000 concubines and minions, and then Plagueis was like, "I'm going to trust a literal psychopath with everything." And it's
and it's interesting because
What are you guys
in the beginning of Plagueis, we definitely get this. How we get rid of Tenebris is not the way it's supposed to happen. You didn't best your master. You took advantage of a situation, which you could argue you did best him. Like Tenebris should have known better, but it is definitely alluded to that you cheated. You cheated the system, and Palpatine does the same. He waits until spoilers for the book. He waits for he waits for an opportune time to get rid of his master, and he doesn't actually best his master. And it's one of those things that I think we start to see this. We saw it with Zana. Zana bested Bane, and we see this with all. But the Sith is all about deception. And it's one of those things. It's like this is the fault of the Sith at the end of the day. But what we can do, maybe we'll just have when you read Plagueis, David. If you ever do, we'll have to do a whole. I'm down to reread Plagueis, because watching the arc, the Clovis arc in season 6. It changes if you read Plagueis.
I'm so many books behind. Like there's the Padme books that they got me reading now.
I just got those.
Padme books. What?
Oh, yeah. There's the last of the trilogy for the new Padme book comes out in the beginning of April. So there's a Padme trilogy. It's
cool.
Queen's Shadow, Queen's Peril, and Queen's Hope is coming out.
Yeah,
soon,
nice.
Next month.
So I just got both of those on my Audible credits that have been piling up.
I actually got the first one on Kindle. I'm like, you know what? I need to hear this because it's not. I can't get into it while I'm reading.
It's the girl who voices Padme in the Clone Wars. She's the narrator for the.
It makes it so much easier to get through.
That's fair. Yeah, so I'm excited to listen to those, and I'll once the Queen's Hope is released, I'll grab that. But yeah, so let's keep trucking through this movie. I just kind of want to talk about the next kind of scene we get is the Battle of Kashyyyk, where we do see the Wookiee homeworlds, and Yoda is besties with the Wookiees, which is great. And I really love this battle because it's so short. It tells a very good story. And it's just cool to see a bunch of Wookiees and just to see the diverse Wookiees, the most we've seen since the holiday special. But one thing that I like about this scene is the difference that we see in this scene versus what we see in Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks is we do see a resourcefulness from the Wookiees that isn't campy or cheesy. This is a underestimated species that is very capable. People think, oh, you live in trees, you're not an actual threat to the separatist forces, and here they are. They're like going into the water on kites with bombs and planting them on, and like it's everything they do is so cool, but so resourceful. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on seeing Chewbacca alone? It's kind of cool, but any thoughts on the Battle of Kashyyyk?
I liked seeing like the stuff like what you were saying, like the flying devices that was pretty much just made of wood, and it was just kind of flying in, and just that like they fit just a really cool battle into a small sequence, and like it ends with Yoda just barely dodging a blast with his cane.
Oh yeah, it's cool, and kind of like when you say, it's they're flying in on these wooden things. It's with the the arc with the younglings in Clone Wars, Gunji has a wooden lightsaber, and I think it just shows that you don't need these. I mean, there's these benefits to having these high-tech, futuristic materials and engineering, but the Wookiees are very traditional and are very capable, despite maintaining that tradition. And
it's like sacred,
Yeah, the Worship trees are sacred to them. Which, if we can get a Village Bride type story about the Force flowing through the Worship trees, and how in tune the Wookiees are with the Force, but just don't talk, because you went with Gunji, they're like, oh, we don't see Wookiee Jedi that often. Like, why do we need to be Jedi? What makes us need to be Jedi? Why can't we just be strong with the Force? Why do you think these Worship trees grow so big? They're like leaking Force energy. So I would love to see kind of that, like, hey, this is all we need is what's on our planet. That's I need that to happen.
Good points. Very good points. I think that the sacred aspect that you brought up, David, with the Wookiees' willpower, and then you said about the Force, just why does it have to be Jedi and Sith all the time? Why do we need a specific idealistic order all of the time?
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about how the Force is within everything all the time. So, but this scene, I like the score. That's something new to add. I like the score of this.
The music in this movie it hits perfectly every time. But yeah, so kind of after we see kind of Yoda hanging out with the Wookiees, which is this really good battle, we kind of switch to going back to Coruscant, and Obi-Wan is preparing to leave for Utapau to take on Grievous and the Separatists as a whole, kind of to put an end to this war, and they're kind of tasking Obi-Wan to do that. And this is the last time Obi-Wan sees Anakin. We can get into the same person, different person discussion, I think, later, but this is, for all intents and purposes, the last time he sees his friend as his friend. And something I noticed, and I don't know if this was intentional, is Obi-Wan leaves to the shuttle, which is basking in the sunlight.
Yep. And Anakin's in the shade.
Anakin is in the shadows of the structures of Coruscant, and he is staying there. Whereas Obi-Wan is leaving on a ship into the light. And I was like, I don't know if that was intentional on George Lucas' part, but I'm like, man, that hits really hard, especially with Kenobi coming out. I'm like, oh man, this is good. But yeah, I don't know. To me, this has always been a hard-hitting scene. I think on like anything past the first viewing of the film, where it's just like, this is the last time they see each other, like truly see each other, and it's a hard scene to watch, even though it's kind of like a happy scene. They're saying, oh, they're joking around, but yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think whether the light and shadow was planned or not. I mean, we know what happens. It works. And I will use the phrase "everything happens for a reason" there. And if anything, this scene, I agree, it is the last time Obi-Wan sees his friend Anakin. And I think Obi-Wan portrays what we talked about earlier. The Jedi are just doing what they can at this point. Because I think Anakin has a lot that Obi-Wan could have commented on. Like, hey, remember what Qui-Gon said? Focus. Hey, remember this. Hey, remember that. But at this point, he's like, you're my homie. You should know better. And look at the state of the Republic. Let me just go to Utapau.
Yeah.
I love you, bro.
And I think he knows that this is a chance for him to end the war, or for just the war to end entirely. Is once they knock out Grievous, this is going to be it for the Separatists. Dooku's done for. they need to take out Grievous, and they know that the Separatist leaders are here on Utapau, and this is the one chance, or maybe the last chance. If they can't do this, the Republic will crumble. And Obi-Wan being Obi-Wan is pretty nonchalant about it. He's like, anything to get this over with. Let's go. I'm ready to do it, which is great.
I think he truly understood what we talked about with Qui-Gon saying your focus creates your reality. I think Obi-Wan did.
Yep, I agree.
I think he consistently shows that he understood that. The start of episode 2.
Yeah, even joking with Cody before going down to Utapau.
Yeah. Yep. And the Cody interactions that we're gonna get are really good. The Cody and the interactions that I think we get in the Clone Wars, we don't get a lot of Cody in the Clone Wars, but the stuff we do get, it's like it almost, every time you see Cody, it's almost heartbreaking. When you know what's gonna happen. And you brought up the Revenge of the Sith novelization. I haven't read it, but we'll get to the really good Cody part of the Revenge of the Sith novelization. But yeah,
good comment,
yes.
David. A little laughter here and there.
Yeah,
goes a long way.
Yeah,
they're about to go down to Utapau, joking around with Cody. Let's do this.
Yeah. But yeah, so we get to Utapau. Obi-Wan is kind of interacting with the Panau or
Pawan, I think how you say it?
Pawan species that is greeting him, and I think this scene's actually really interesting because we see this species that is like, oh yes, Obi-Wan from the Republic. Yeah, the Separatists are here. Where they are. Go do what you got. We know you have a lightsaber. Go. And I think what we're starting to see is, yes, we are seeing, this. The movies are very much from the perspective of the Republic are the good guys, and even the Clone Wars is from that. But it is becoming very evident that not just the Republic, not just the Jedi, are very sick of the Separatists, because this is a planet, this is a species where they're just like, we don't want them here, and they are here, and we will do anything to get rid of them. And if that requires us to rely on the Republic to do so, so be it. And we see this time and time and again in the Clone Wars of like, this is a neutral system, but we sure as hell don't want the Separatists here. And we will do whatever if that means we have to join the Republic to get rid of the Separatists, so be it. So I think that's a really interesting moment. And then we do get the most famous line of Star Wars, I think, at this point, outside of "I am your father," and we get "Hello there," which I know it's been memed to death at this point, but every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, that's so good, Obi-Wan.
Yeah, it's a very clean and simple way to be like, "You ready?"
Yeah. And it is a from what I understand, it is just a callback to A New Hope when Obi-Wan sees R2 and says, "Hello there."
Yep.
And it is
cool.
such a good thing, and it became this whole basically for a whole new generation of like, "Hello there, General Kenobi." So this is a great fight. I don't like ranking fights. I think fights are interesting, but it's never been like the best thing of Star Wars. But I really love the Grievous versus Obi-Wan fight. The first time we see the forearms with the lightsabers, I mean, it's like, people have joked about it. It's like, oh, they gave us 2 lightsabers in episode 1. Now they're giving someone the guy that's got 4 lightsabers. But I do love this, and just the fact that he's a machine and he's just spinning these blades, and Obi-Wan's got to find the right time to jam his lightsaber into basically a spinning death wheel. So I love this fight. I don't know. Do you guys have anything to add as far as Grievous versus Kenobi, or Grievous in general?
I liked the second half of the fight, like especially when he's chasing after Grievous, and then like the end of it. Mm-hmm. That first half, I feel like when I first watched episode 3, there was a bunch of Legends material that made Grievous look scary, like absolutely frightening. So then to see Obi-Wan just like cut off his limbs pretty easily, and then for Grievous to run away, I was like, oh man, I was kind of hoping for more of a difficult kill to climb. And then
That
the end of it, you kind of get that.
that is something about this film that I think it's not the biggest issue, but it's something that I've always had an issue with, is these very strong characters, Dooku and Grievous, are disposed of so quickly and so easily, that I don't think they get the time to breathe as villains. We see that Dooku is this fallen Jedi, and he brings up this contention with the Republic of, one of your greatest Jedi left. You just have that subtext in Attack of the Clones of like, Dooku's so important to the Jedi, and he left, and he's now a Sith, and he's basically leading the Separatist army. What's going on here? And then he's, at the very beginning of the movie, we lose Dooku, and then, like you said, like General Grievous has 4 lightsabers. Obi-Wan's got 1, but Obi-Wan cuts off his arms. Like there was no effort, which it's just. I think Grievous as like a concept character I really like, but I think as executed in both 3D Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, I don't think he's that great of a villain. 2D Clone Wars,
Now,
Grievous is cool.
you bring up 3D Clone Wars. It reminds me, my comparison of Grievous in 3D Clone Wars is most of the time he's like Rita Repulsa from Power Rangers. He's just like the weekly "I'll get you next time" villain.
Yes, always running away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my coming to terms with all this is Obi-Wan Kenobi finally found out the technique to quickly slice Grievous's wrists off like weeks prior to this engagement, this interaction.
Yeah,
So he just figured out the strategy. He didn't know it before.
I think you're right with the notion of the Clone Wars existing. How many times Obi-Wan and Grievous have fought at this point? This is clockwork to him. And like you said, he's probably been figuring out. He probably has been just like going through the timings of his rotating arms, like in his free time of like, all right. So this is the RPM it goes at. All right, here's where I put it in perfectly, and then I can. So, but like again, that's just with the context of the Clone Wars. I think as like a standalone, it's always been one of the things like, Grievous, cool for seeing 4 lightsabers spinning as a death blade. But yeah, it's one of the things that I think is very. Again, I like the fight. But yeah, it ends very quickly. Or
And
like
at least he kicked. Yeah, phase 1. At least phase 2, he got kicked around. Obi-Wan got kicked around a lot. At least.
Yeah. And when he's using the pole, the electro pole, I know that there's a word for that I don't know what it is. But yeah, so before we get into phase 2 boss fight of Grievous, we switch back to going to Coruscant, where Palpatine and Anakin essentially have their final confrontation, final interaction as Jedi and Chancellor, where he's bringing up the stuff about the Sith. How do you know? How do you know these things about the Force, about the dark side? Who is this Plagueis character? And it is revealed that he is actually Darth Sidious. And this is such an interesting scene to me because we do see Anakin draw his lightsaber. Mm-hmm. And this is like the last fleeting moment of Anakin being a Jedi. Because he knows this is wrong. He knows he has to tell Obi-Wan, he has to tell Mace, he has to tell Yoda and everyone. And, it's very natural, it's like, oh, you would like to kill me. I would certainly like to. Because he knows that this is the right, to him, this is the right thing to do. We have to get rid of Palpatine. He's the mastermind behind it all. And Palpatine is just twisting his thoughts on him. Palpatine does say the Jedi have a dogmatic, narrow view of the Force. I'm gonna leave that, guys, up to you. I have thoughts on that, but I want to bring it to you guys first. Uh, is it a manipulation to you, or do you agree with it?
A lot of it feels like opinion and manipulation. Like even in that scene when he's saying, "I know you would. I can feel your anger." It's almost like Palpatine took a gamble. He was almost sure he was going to win. Like, yeah, he's not going to kill me. I'm going to throw his words right back at him, and he's not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Ruddy, where do you align with Palpatine on this one?
I think it's extreme because is it okay if I move to the next 2 bullet points
Yeah,
as I respond to you? Yeah. So like I noted, the Jedi's hypocrisy mirrors the Sith's hypocrisy. I'll explain how I feel about that. I would like to see how you guys feel about that bullet point I noted today. And then in general, Palpatine is just using misdirection, partial and half truth, and massive emotional manipulation on Anakin. So with that understanding, like he jumps into it with saying, don't listen to the Jedi's dogmatic narrow view of the Force. It sort of drives me crazy because knowing who Palpatine is, the Sith also have a code, and a code is really only dogmatic, in my opinion, when it's forced upon others. And the funniest thing to me is that Sith don't necessarily force their code upon others, and the Jedi don't necessarily force their code upon others. So it's not really dogmatic, but they're both imbalanced codes, in my opinion. I think the Jedi do have fault. I agree with Palpatine in the sense that the Jedi don't acknowledge inner conflict, spiritual turmoil, and the dark creeping up in emotional ways as often as it does in life. I think the Sith totally just disregard life and well-being for anyone else other than themselves.
Yep.
And to me, the statement bothers me not because I 100% disagree with Palpatine's criticisms, but I do. I primarily do because he's using half-truth and manipulation on Anakin, and his very order has an imbalanced doctrine of its own. So it's like this scene is fascinating to me because I think that any ideology that doesn't have total transparency and respect for everyone involved is like going to manifest some attributes of what Palpatine is doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as far as the Jedi hypocrisy versus the Sith hypocrisy, I agree. I think, again, when we have stuff, like we see stuff in the Clone Wars, we see stuff in Rebels about the Force is more than the Jedi and the Sith. And then we have now stuff, we have like Star Wars Visions, even though it's not canon. But we have like other expanded universe novels that I think they do explore the Force. We see cultures that use the Force in different ways. We have the Night Sisters that use the Force in a completely different way. And, again, like Village Riot is far and away my favorite viewpoint of the Force, and just this culture that has lived alongside the Force completely as a part of their culture for who knows how long. And so, yes, from a certain point of view, like the theme of Star Wars, the Jedi are dogmatic and they are hypocrites, but what they're doing isn't wrong. And it's one of those things, it's like you have characters like Yoda, you have characters like Obi-Wan, and you have characters like Mace Windu, where they follow that code to a very good point. They do the right thing. Yoda and Obi-Wan know about Anakin and Padme. They know. They have always known. Since they were kids, they knew. And they didn't punish Anakin. They didn't do anything like, you can't do this. Like, Anakin, why do you keep going on so many missions with Padme? you want to have sex with Padme while you're out there. We get it. Like, but it was never one of those things. Like, it's not a dogmatic thing of it's just like you must go through 50 Jedi floggings with a lightsaber because you banged Padme on the way out to hang out on a mission. That's not what was going on, and it's they had trust and faith in Anakin that he would figure this out himself, that he was so strong that he would figure it out. Yoda believed in Anakin, and Obi-Wan believed in Anakin. And Obi-Wan knew himself he was not immune to those things. He had the relationship with Satine. So I think I think that you're exactly right. Palpatine is using half-truths and partial truths to convince Anakin into his own dogmatic view of what the Force is and what the Sith are, and it's one of those things that like drives me crazy, like that Palpatine is doing this. It's just so how evil he is, and you're right with the emotional manipulation that he throws towards Anakin. It's just like, God, you're awful. David,
very awful.
Are the Jedi evil, David?
I'm definitely a big fan of the Jedi, but I do understand, especially the prequel Jedi, have issues. They have problems everywhere, and they're like, because they haven't been challenged for so long, their views have become very stale and outdated, and they're rigid in their ways, type of stuff. So like they put a bunch of pressure on Anakin to be this certain way, and it got to him.
Yeah. I think, what's interesting to me that I noticed, and again, this falls way out of canon. We have the prequel era Jedi. We have the Dawn of the Republic. I'm sorry, the Dusk of the Republic, basically. Jedi, like the end of the Republic Jedi, very problematic, very misguided, very improper. Rewind, we have the High Republic Jedi. Totally get it. Totally understand what it's about. We'll get to this later on when we kind of get to Mustafar, but they serve the light and they serve life. And that is the core principle of being a Jedi. We rewind a little bit later or earlier, and we get to the end of the Old Republic. We get to the Army of Light in General Hoth. And this, if you thought the Jedi were militaristic in the prequels, the Jedi towards the end, the Jedi Sith Civil War, horrible, absolutely horrible. We take another step back to like the Old Republic Jedi. They're pretty good. They get it. They understand. And is it perfect? No, but they pull themselves out of wars. Like, this is not good. There's the whole Revan and Malak thing. They want to go fight this war, and the Jedi are like, no, we are not warriors. We are not going to be your holy army for you. And then we roll back even further into the Jedi, which is they're pretty neutral. They're all about balance. So it's so interesting that they go through these cycles, and I'm very curious if we get something that takes place really far future. Because with Visions, we got the Ninth Jedi, which seems like another issue of like Jedi being good again.
Not to stray too far off of it, but like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, when he's at the end, he does the most Jedi thing I've ever seen.
We get this another. Yeah, you're right. We get a rise in Return of the Jedi. We get this rise to goodness and greatness and the salvation from the dark. And we fast forward into The Last Jedi, and we get another fall. We get another, and this is obviously a much narrower, like less than a century has taken place versus millennia going back. Yeah, we do see this happening again, and it's like it just proves it's not easy being a Jedi. But yeah, like again,
I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just need to say one more thing about this. I think I think the thing that makes the Jedi and Sith seem like across the spectrum 100% with all of the time dogmatic is because a part of the Republic era Jedi and all of the Sith they tack on this responsibility to drive the fate of others in a specific direction. And I think everyone can agree the difference here, which matters most, is the intention of that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ahsoka, Lannery, and Dawn of the Jedi, whatever, the old Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes even Plagueis to an extent, they do little to no, like, caring too much about the fate of others and the fate of the galaxy, and putting it on as a burden for themselves. Obviously, Sith take it as a burden to control, Jedi take it as a burden to, like, influence positively. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But I do think that they're perceived as dogmatic because they're trying to influence others so freaking much, and
I think
that never works out in my opinion. You know?
Yeah, I think the one thing, and we'll move on after this, is I think most people, when you come from an outside perspective, it always seems dogmatic, no matter what. If you see the rituals and interpretations and daily going ons of a organization, whether that's a religious organization or just a community, you may think that they have a rigid dogmatic view just because you don't understand the inner workings, which I think lots of people, especially towards the end of the Republic, were starting to feel that because they weren't in the Jedi. But we see countless times, even right before Order 66 in the Clone Wars, they're saying, we can't get involved with this. This is not our job. We are not soldiers. You know, we have Jedi generals now, but like we can't just keep throwing our lightsabers at people. And it's just one of the things, like, if you're not a part of that and you don't see the frustrations that Anakin was going through because he wanted to throw his lightsaber everywhere, and the council was like, no, this is not who we are. And no one else but the council and the Jedi are going to see that. So anyone on the outside will see that as dogmatic, and then you have people like Palpatine that'll manipulate it that way.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Oh yeah, from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
But so we do go back to Utapau after this. I know it was a pretty intense conversation. We go back to Utapau. We're gonna watch Grievous get blown up. So I think this is a really interesting scene. You're right. This is a great fight scene. Kind of like a good phase 2 boss battle. And what I think is so cool is how we see Grievous go out from Obi-Wan, where, you know, Obi-Wan's kind of losing the upper hand in this fight and loses his lightsaber, something he's told Anakin multiple times not to do. It happens to Obi-Wan. And he pulls the blaster while he's hanging off of the structure and shoots. Well, first he pulls apart this droid's glass cased heart, and he fires the blaster like 5 times into his heart, which is interesting because it's like he's a moving target. He's hanging on for his life, and he hits accurately, which proves Obi-Wan's a resourceful guy. But I do love the so uncivilized line when he throws away the blaster, because it's such a callback to the original trilogy. When he says it's more civilized than a blaster, it's, you know, it's for a better time. Lightsaber's a weapon for a better time. And I just love the fact that he puts an end to the Clone Wars with a blaster, which I think is great. You know, it's the things that the clones have been fighting with. I think there's so much to this scene. It's a very fun scene, but I think there's a lot to this scene that is going on when he kind of shoots Grievous in the heart. But yeah, I don't know if you guys want to chime in on that. But yeah, I think that's such a cool way to go.
It was a very serious moment, and then like the noise that Grievous makes and this kind of like comically falls down.
Oh yeah, like catches on fire, and
yeah, they balance out quite well. And then, like, you know, when he's running to his ship later, you can still see the smoldering corpse there.
Mm-hmm. Also, shout out to Grievous's ship. That thing is cool. The Belbelub or whatever they call it,
like a Rolls Royce of ships.
Yeah, that thing is really cool. But yeah, so Grievous is done. The Clone Wars have essentially ended at this point. Once once basically we learned that the Separatist has no leadership, the Clone Wars are done. Obi-Wan Kenobi has ended the Clone Wars, but it's not so easy because there is an ace in the hole that that Palpatine has. But before we get to Palpatine making his master plan, Anakin goes to Mace Windu and tells him that Palpatine is in fact Darth Sidious. He is a Dark Lord of the Sith. And one thing I love about this scene, and I'll let you guys chime in, Mace Windu does not question Anakin. A lot of people say that Mace was unfair to Anakin, or that things would have been different if Mace would have treated Anakin better. All he says is, "Are you sure?"
Mm-hmm.
And Anakin says yes, and Mace believes him. And I think Mace always had faith in Anakin, just like all the other masters did. He just knew that there was danger, and that was just his way of saying, "I'm going to test you." And I love Mace Windu, and I love this interaction because it does show that Mace from day, and it just makes the later scene just more heartbreaking, is Mace always trusted Anakin. And when he says something very, very serious, like, "Hey, the guy who's running the Republic, yeah, he's a Sith Lord." Mace is like, I mean that's like one of those things, like, it's like you say, like, "Oh yeah, Joe Biden's actually a demon. I have proof of it." You're just like, "Are you sure?" Or Mace is like, "Okay, I believe you. I have no reason to not believe you because I do trust you." So I think this is such a great scene. And then we kind of just jump from that to Anakin sitting alone in the council, and the symbology of this whole little interaction is so good. And he's looking over where the Senate building is, where Padme's estate is, and Padme is doing the same. She's looking into the temple, and she doesn't get, and this is what I hate about and it's not that I hate about it, it's heartbreaking. Anakin never gets to say goodbye to Anakin. She leaves Anakin on a regular note, and he comes back as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And the last interaction is her just looking out to the Jedi Temple before she sees it burning. And just the back and forth that they show of the sun setting on Coruscant, and them just looking at where they know they are. And if you tell me Padme couldn't have some type of force sensitivity, I will never believe you. She's a better Jedi than Anakin is. She knew he was there. She knew exactly where he was. She knew he was pacing around the council room. And it's like a heartbreaking scene. Like no dialogue, no nothing. Just them back and forth, shots of them looking out to where they are. So yeah, if anyone, I don't know how to. It's something that I didn't really notice. I just thought it was more like B-roll, and then I just like watched it this time. I was like, man, this is oof.
In that same conversation he has with Mace, like, you can tell that Mace does care about his well-being when he said, "I sense much conflict in you.
Yeah.
It would do better if you stayed behind." And Anakin would have been a fantastic resource, because they only brought like 4 Jedi with them to take out a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
And then you cut to like just no words when they're looking at each other, but that music was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It fit perfectly in the scene, and then it jumps to like a more upbeat sort of tune when he's running to the speeder. He's like, I can't wait, I have to go.
Yeah, I love that scene. It's a scene I always overlooked until recently, and I absolutely love it. I love just that lead up with Mace and Anakin. And you're right when he says, "I don't think you should be there." Like, it's one of those things, like, you are a great general of the Republic Army. You are, like you said, you're a great asset. You shouldn't be there, because he knows what would happen if he was there, and what happens when he shows up.
I always wonder. Oh, finish your thought.
Yeah, no, I was pretty much done. Go ahead.
Okay, I always wonder. Xanatos bring up something interesting because I always wonder if Anakin's like. I truly think Anakin had a split mentality, and it was like fighting, warfare in totality all the time. And so I'm wondering if him walking into Palpatine's room with, you know, Windu, Kit Fisto, and the other guys would have like it's a what if, right? And it didn't happen, but it's fun. What if that would have kept him steady on that's my enemy, and what if they could have, like, video game terminology, ganked him quicker? I don't know, but that's aside the point. I love the music, the reflection scene, from the council to the apartment, and also I think that Mace, regardless if he should have invited Anakin instead of leaving Anakin alone to have a psychotic war in his mind, I think he could have. I mean, what he did do, which was objectively freaking awesome all the time with Anakin, is keep him below him, quote unquote below him, in terms of like not catering towards Anakin's wants, not catering towards his desires, not catering towards his emotions.
Yep.
Because that kept this like business only mentality between the two of them, which works really well. I think if you're a Jedi, you're gonna want to prioritize that when it's time of massive conflict. And the way he interacted with Anakin is super great.
Yeah, yeah. I think the culmination of how we see Mace Windu kind of interact with Anakin throughout the movies and throughout the Clone Wars, and this felt like the final scene, or not the final scene, like the final lead up. It is really, really good, and I think you're right. And maybe I would say not below, but just at a distance. Not letting Anakin, because
Right.
he clearly knows.
I did the air quotes for a reason.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know any other. I don't know any other word.
Yeah, it's one of those things like he
It
knows
sucks.
again, it comes back to Anakin and Padme being the worst kept secret, is he knows Anakin has an issue with attachment. So if he gets too close to Anakin, anything he does, Anakin will just automatically feel like he's being betrayed by Mace Windu, when that's not the case at all, and that's not Mace's intent, but he knows that's how he's going to perceive it. And so man, Mace Windu is such a fantastic character.
I think Mace is like the perfect representation of like how a diligent council member acts. I think Yoda obviously does a good job. They all do. Kiadi-Mundi, Obi-Wan, okay, all of them. But like Mace, I haven't really thought about it until right now. So thanks for writing it down and saying something, David. Because there's that type of distance and respect, and obviously unconditional love he has for Anakin, and trust. But there's no time for funny business at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we kind of go from that really good scene to Mace Windu essentially taking charge with other Jedi Masters into Chancellor Palpatine's office, and we get the famous "It's treason" then scene. He flicks out his lightsaber, which is super cool. And we do get the most disappointing fight of all time in Star Wars. It's something that drives me crazy when people complain about like sequel fights, and I'm like, Kit Fisto got like spun around and hit with a lightsaber by Palpatine with no effort. Like, did him dirty.
One thing that was in the book, again, that I wish they had done in the movie, which makes more sense as to why, like, they died, or one of them at least died so quick. Palpatine had his lightsaber hidden in a statue, and he used the Force to pull it to him through one of the Jedi.
Oh.
So like a sneak attack, instead of just charging right at them.
Yeah, the spinny attack.
Yeah.
That showed up in one of the Battlefront games. Star Wars is full of goofy spins.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is like to me has always been like a bad lead up to a great fight. Palpatine versus Mace Windu is so great. You do see how good Mace Windu is with a lightsaber in this. The choreography is fantastic, and we get to the point where Mace Windu essentially beats Palpatine, and it's just one of those things that you think you even, with the scurry of Palpatine into the corner on the window. It also I love the slashing the window open. Oh, it's so good. But like, you see that Palpatine, like, I don't think that this kind of like how we said, like, we talked about like the Fives arc where it's like stuff is not going according to plan. I don't think people like say, "Oh, Palpatine was messing with him." I don't think Palpatine was messing with Mace Windu in this. Palpatine was scared this was all about to end right then and there.
I used to think Palpatine was buying time, but I think I found somewhere that no, it was legit. Mace beat him.
Yeah. And this is one of those things. I think this scene, this really quick scene when Anakin shows up and Mace Windu is reflecting the lightning back, because we've seen Yoda catch the lightning, we've seen people absorb lightning, but Mace Windu is reflecting the lightning back onto Palpatine, which we've never seen anyone do, which just shows how strong he is, not just as a duelist, but how strong he is in the Force. And like, yeah, like he bested Palpatine here. And what I think is so interesting in this whole scene is there's a lot going on between these three. Palpatine is scared, he has fear, and he is soon going to fuel all of what he's about to do with that fear of, I'm about to lose everything that I've been working for over the past several decades. Mace Windu is mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted from this war, and this is the true moment of ending everything. And he wants to end it so badly for the Republic, for his friends, that he could cut off Palpatine's head right now, and it'd be over with. And peace would be restored from him doing that. But he knows it's not the Jedi way. But we see him like shaking the lightsaber, like there is like an instability there. And then Anakin is like, we need to try him. It's like he's not ready to get rid of Palpatine yet. He still has that attachment. Mace goes for it, and he knows he shouldn't, but he's gonna go for it. Anakin stops him.
Mace, can you imagine what's going through his head? Because he's like, I'm risking coming off as an assassin to the Supreme Chancellor for the sake of killing.
Who's gonna believe him?
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna believe that the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic was a Sith Lord? Like, again, like I said, it's like
that's
calling
dedication
the president
on
the
Mace's
devil.
part.
Like, and this is what I love about Star Wars, is it's like where this is a possibility of like, if you go out and say that Joe Biden is the devil or Vladimir Putin is the devil, like literally the devil, people be like, you're crazy. But this is a world where like, this is real. Like, he's a Sith Lord. He is a horrible, evil being. It's just, but he has that fear of like, who I'm going to be seeing, there's part of him that's probably like, there's got to be security footage of him with a lightsaber killing Kit Fisto and the other Jedi Masters. What if this is all orchestrated? Is there more cover-ups that I'll have to worry about? A million and one things are going through his head, and he's being clouded from the dark side. The Force is not helping him at this moment, it doesn't feel like. And then we do see the demise of Mace Windu. And yes, it is the demise of Mace Windu. Mm-hmm. We're not going to get him back. I wouldn't hate it if we got him back, but we're not getting him back. At least in a post Revenge of the Sith form of media. And this is the birth of Darth Vader. essentially, or this is the start of Darth Vader, the naming of Darth Vader. And I wrote down here that this fall makes so much more sense with the Clone Wars, especially the later episodes, as we see Anakin losing control of himself and just not being able to be the Jedi he's supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm curious about you guys. Did you feel ever before, or even now, like the fall of Anakin it feels very abrupt in this scene of like, oh, you just killed Mace Windu and you're just gonna become a Dark Lord of the Sith now.
Yeah, even the naming of Darth Vader, like I always wanted to know what was going through Palpatine's head. Like, I'm gonna pick Vader as a name for you. But there's never been anything that like says, oh yeah, Palpatine chose Vader because of this. Like there was never any reasoning behind that.
Yeah.
And he just kind of starts asking like, okay, so how are we going to kill the rest of the Jedi? How are we going to, like, it is very abrupt in that sense. And then it kind of eases into, I don't want to say more of a gradual sense, because by the time he sees Obi-Wan again, he is fully there.
Yeah.
Like full on dark side. I hate the Jedi. And it like not a whole lot of time has transpired.
Yes. Right. Do you have any? I mean, do you have anything about just I would even just say the movie aspect of it. Yeah.
I think I could say a lot about.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you? Uh-oh. Maybe we lost him. Oh. Okay. Well, we have a note from Roddy. I'll just kind of pick up. Hopefully, I'm not going to say what he was about to say. We have a note basically saying that we have the Jedi are the guardian, or like the embodiment of a guardian being. They protect the light and life, where the Sith are the embodiment of fallen beings. And we do see this. You always fall into the Sith. You do not like rise into the Sith. And I think that's so interesting that we kind of get this, and we see the fall of Anakin Skywalker. And in the Plagueis novel, we see the fall of Sheev Palpatine into Darth Sidious, which we did like fully lose Roddy, unfortunately. Hopefully he comes back in soon. But yeah, this kind of leads us when he's you are Darth Vader. I remember someone saying it was a German translation for Dark Father, but I think that is 100% like yeah.
It's Latin, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I remember, like, there we go. I think we got him back. Welcome to Rogue Council yet again.
Hi. Sorry.
That's okay.
My Wi-Fi dropped. All I gotta say is, this is obviously the climax in Anakin's identity, personality shift. But I mean, it's so artistically well done. So many components. But really, I really feel like the fall to the dark, after thinking about it right now, is the perfect representation of what religions call possession and what modern psychology calls mental total instability.
Mm-hmm.
And like where you have these intentions that sometimes get erased and replaced with bad ones, or straight up don't even ever do anything that you intend to do, and the polar opposite of what you intend to do. And I really hold a lot of freaking love in my heart for George Lucas writing all this out. The prequels, I don't really favor a trilogy that much. When I get asked the question, what's your favorite, I'll answer, but the prequels are a masterpiece. This scene is a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's too dark for some people. I understand that. I really do. But maybe interpret those deep growls and those low tones as like, I don't know, Tibetan monk chanting if it freaks you out. But really, it's a really cool representation of a mental destruction, and
Yep.
I honestly, my response to you is beyond Star Wars context. I nerd out over this scene.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
cool.
before we get to like one of the pivotal moments, I think I've seen a lot of people that want to diagnose Anakin Skywalker psychologically, and I think that's always really interesting when people do it. But I'm like, when we talk about Star Wars, I'm like, you have to bring the spiritual aspect of it, because there's more than just the chemical going ons in his brain. The force is at play here, and I think it's one of those things. It's like we can talk all day long about, does he have a split personality disorder? Is it bipolar? It's like, I think that's very interesting and very valid ways to analyze it. But at the same time, the dark side of the force is something that we will never comprehend, because it
Are
doesn't.
these right?
Yeah.
Are these concepts related?
Yeah, I think very much so. George Lucas has always compared the dark side of the force to drug addiction.
Interesting.
And it's one of those things. It's like once you're in there, it grabs a hold of you, in the same way drug addiction does. But I have more to say on this when we get to Mustafar. But right now we move forward to the. I still argue is probably the most heartbreaking thing of Star Wars, that it's Dave Filoni's. Dare I say, fetish.
Yeah, it's his go-to.
And it's Order 66.
I'm in the dark. I don't understand.
Order 66.
Dave Filoni's fetish. I'm confused.
Dave Filoni loves Order 66. Every time you see like Dave Filoni's name at the end credits, or it's like if you're getting ready for any piece of Star Wars, it's like, hey, Dave Filoni's working on this. Like, we're gonna get an Order 66 scene in this.
I don't know how if you guys have finished Jedi Fallen Order, but Order 66 is there too.
Yep. It's everywhere. And we could maybe make the argument that yes, we're at the point where we're using it too much, but this is it's such an incredible scene. And incredible is probably not even the right word. I mean, as far as the movie perspective goes, it's an incredible scene. It's just a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking scene. That for me this time around, especially watching the Clone Wars, it's even worse to watch. Because who these Jedi are. When you watch Plo Koon get blown out of the sky, it's like, no, you were the one good thing about season 1. But watching, even watching Ki-Adi-Mundi, he hears the rifles, get put into the shoulder position, and he's like, and I think what is so interesting about this scene, and maybe it wasn't intended that way, is I know a lot of people don't like Ki-Adi-Mundi. He hears those rifles get ready by the clone troopers, and he knew what was happening. I think we have a surprise in a lot of the Jedi, but I think with some of the Jedi, obviously Yoda being so connected with the Force and feeling all of the Jedi go away, we do know. I think there's a lot of people, and I think again with the Clone Wars coming in, like, people started catching on that something's not right. There was obviously a disturbance in the Force towards the end of this war, and I noticed it with Ki-Adi-Mundi is he stops when they point the rifles at him. He stops, and it wasn't like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" It was just like, "It's here." It's what I felt is here now, and it's the music in this. Watching them all go, it's like, oh my god, I hate watching this. I hate watching it. It's so awful.
It's a tragedy it's a tragedy. But it's my only question here is like, did this have to happen for Obi-Wan and Yoda to refine their understanding of their place with the Force?
I think for Obi-Wan, yes. I think him being so involved as a general in the Clone Wars, I think, in a similar fashion to Mace Windu, where we see that hesitation of them just being spiritually and emotionally and physically drained from the war. Yeah, I think, does not maybe didn't need to happen, but did something need to go incredibly wrong, where you know at any point, Yoda and Obi-Wan, and any surviving Jedi is like, what could I have done? What could I have done differently to have made sure this didn't happen? I hate to like take such a serious moment and go back to the really heartwarming moment in the beginning of like, we're smarter than this. It's just like what, we see this kind of later on in the aftermath, but Yoda, I think Yoda feels the most guilt for Order 66, because everyone looked to him. He is the great teacher of the Jedi, and this was even beyond his scope. He felt something was wrong, but not this wrong. And I think him being isolated on Dagobah, it's just like we know that he goes back to the cave on Dagobah over and over again, essentially to atone for his sins. And it's like, it's like Yoda's story is like heartbreaking in that sense. And such a, the way that Obi-Wan's story is heartbreaking, Yoda's story is heartbreaking in a completely different way. He feels like the biggest failure in the world, in the galaxy, rather. Yeah, outside of like the million versions of Order 66, watching this again, like, how did you guys feel?
I still think that even though it's right before a very, very, very tragic moment, the visual of Anakin walking up the steps with the troops behind him is still one of my most favorite images in all of Star Wars. It just looks so cool. And I think Anakin is like on the verge of tears just walking up there because he feels like he has to be doing this.
I don't think I had this in a note, but it was something I put in, I think when we rewatched this. I think there are very few moments from Anakin being anointed as Darth Vader to the birth of Vader in the suit. We see almost every scene we see him in, he is, if not about to cry, he is crying. We see tears in so many of these scenes. Like even in the youngling scene, which comes right after this, there when he looks at them, it's not even anger. It's just like it's hatred for himself that he's doing this, but he knows he has to do it for this plan he thinks is going to work. This is what he has to do. Yeah, he's crying pretty much the rest of this movie, which is like awful. Oh my god. But yeah.
It hits me. Sound a bit like Anakin here. It hits me in two polar opposite ways. On one hand, I'm like, why'd you guys let this happen to you? On the other, I'm like crying on the inside, So that's why I leave it at simply a tragedy, because to me, it's like, it should not have happened. I've only read a bit of the Into the Void, and I was so surprised to hear how the Jedi worked. And their code is so good. And I was like, they're not really a part of, they're not in a position where like they have massive blind spots like the Jedi and the Republic do. And it's fine. It happened. We're talking about episode 3, so yeah, Plo Koon, that whole sequence, terrible, it's sad.
Plo Koon getting put on this guy, like that hit me harder. Like Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi hit me hardest, because of the way Ki-Adi scene.
Me the hardest.
Because I was like, it's like that. Like I said, it is that there was no surprise for him. Like if he knew, I interpret as he knew it was happening. And then Plo Koon is the most wholesome Jedi and it's like that's just the way you're gonna go out.
And it was done by Plo's Bros too. When you look at Clone
Yeah,
Wars.
that's the worst. I know Malik brings it up all the time of like, yeah, they got on a gunship that said Plo's Bros.
Yeah.
Damn.
And then
I love
the other
Plo in
thing,
Clone Wars. a lot.
yeah, Plo in Clone Wars is so good. And it's like I said, he's one of the most wholesome Jedi. He's one of my favorite. But the other thing we see is we see Obi-Wan, we have this, and this is like how dangerous and deadly these inhibitor chips were. Is Cody gives Obi-Wan his lightsaber. It's the thing. We go back to like, oh yeah, Obi-Wan lost his lightsaber. Shouldn't have done that. To Cody giving it back to him, and then immediately he gets the order, blows him off of the cliff, like no hesitancy.
Oh yeah.
The part of the Revenge of the Sith novel I know happens is Cody basically says, I don't think I should have given him that lightsaber back. But yeah, we kind of go on from this into
sort of dark humor right there.
Yeah, it's like the tragedy of Cody. Last night we were talking about Kenobi, and I was like, what if we get like the first live action Tamura Morrison clone we get is gonna be Kenobi, and it's gonna be Commander Cody, who's with the Empire, and it's just like them being like, so we heard Obi-Wan Kenobi's alive. Weren't you the one that was supposed to take care of him? And he's like, I took care of that. He's like, yeah, no, he's definitely alive. We definitely saw him. We definitely tried to kill him. Now we're gonna kill you. And like this is like the end of Commander Cody's story, is like them finding out Kenobi's still alive in the Kenobi show. So I was like, oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh man.
But kind of we move on. We don't move on from Order 66, but we do see the aftermath, which we kind of see the Padme and Anakin scene post Order 66, and this is where this is the first time we really do see Anakin lie to Padme, outside of like anything he's telling her or not telling her the full truth, more so for protection. He is lying to Padme at this point. We don't ever see him do this, and this is like the corruption of the dark side, like fully coming through. And like this scene is heartbreaking, in so many ways. The rest of this movie is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the only other thing about this little aftermath segment is the moments we get with Bail Organa and him going on the Corellian Corvette, which I do believe is the Tantive 4.
Yeah.
And it's again kind of like that feeling I think a lot of us had with Rogue One, is going back on board the Tantive 4, and we do see seeing Obi-Wan and Yoda back on the Tantive 4, or just on the Tantive 4 in general, is like they're tying everything together in this film. I think it's so well done. But yeah, then we get to basically the finale of the film, where Anakin arrives on Mustafar. And this, I won't get into kind of what I was going to get into just yet, because there's a few other things that happen. He is sent to kill all of the Separatists. Like Palpatine orders him to kill all the Separatist leaders. And he does, and we see Anakin with the Sith eyes, which we will never see again because he's behind a mask. But I think there's a lot of interpretation in this scene. I want to know if you guys have any interpretation of him. Even just, I even just see him walking, and it's different.
Yeah, from the point when he's lying to Padme, it's almost like he's also trying to convince himself. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm gonna convince myself of this lie, because it is pretty much true anyway. In my mind, in Palpatine's perspective, whatever, he's gonna say that. Then, like, in that moment when he's killing all the Separatists, is probably when he's like fully turning, and you get that moment where Newt Gunray's trying to plead with him. Is like you get that little tidbit like, Sidious promised us peace, all we want is peace, and then he gets cut off because he gets cut down. And yeah, then again, Anakin is crying, looking over the lava.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's still that inner conflict where he's got the yellow eyes and then doesn't.
Yeah, he. I may have said at the Palpatine, whatever the anointment, the whatever when he became Vader
Mm-hmm.
after Mace died. I may have sounded absolutist, like that's the focal point when he absolutely changed, and it's like no, it's a progression, as you pointed out, David.
Mm-hmm.
He was killing. You know, I'm not going to debate if they're innocent. The Separatists, I don't care right now. They were unarmed beings standing up in a room, and he chopped them all down. And he's doing it for what? Peace for his wife. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's
Obi-Wan
wild.
actually summarized it. He said, "We were deceived by a lie. We all were." That's like not even just them. It's the Separatists. Everyone in the war was deceived
Yeah.
by the one lie.
You know, you David, you brought it up, and I didn't even think about it, and it almost ties back to there are heroes on both sides of this, and it is when Newt Gunray is saying the only reason we did this was Sidious offered peace.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like of course we know the separatists weren't doing good things. We know the bad nature of what they were doing. We know the droid occupations
Hurt people
were
hurt
bad.
people.
We knew this wasn't good, but like it there's no deception there on Newt Gunray's part. There's no lie that, the the banking clans and the techno union and all that, are they morally justified people and on the greatest of the greater good? No, they're not. But at the end of the day, all they wanted was the best for their people and their systems. And like I didn't even notice it until you had said that. I'm just like, all we wanted was peace, and it's being torn away. Like it's all being torn away now, for Palpatine's game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
so,
crazy.
yeah.
Every single person involved was a pawn to a certain degree. It's
Pawn,
crazy.
like, yeah, sacrificial lamb, basically.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
this whole final act is just like, it is the culmination of Palpatine's grand scheme, and it's just like you do see like how many people this affects like negatively. But yeah, we do get after this we get one last scene with the Senate, and Palpatine is completely disfigured. And I think this is like the most real world reflection of, I think, any Star Wars movie, and it is Padme saying, "This is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause, which is now, I think, a very iconic Star Wars quote. But it is very reflective of the world today and yesterday and the future. This is how it always happens. Like, no one is ever like we said in the beginning, like no one's ever, the bad guys are never like, oh yeah, we're the bad guys. You're not making these large governmental societal changes thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to be in the history books of like, you guys were the worst. And Padme and Bale obviously see this. But yeah, I'd love to hear you guys' interpretation on that, just that one line.
She's obviously she's a lot like Leia, because Leia gets that from Padme, but Padme was always about democracy and people's right to choose, and then just watching it become a dictatorship before her eyes must have just destroyed her. Seeing everything she's worked for is just literally crumbling with thunderous applause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like this separatist situation. He was saying all we wanted was peace. Oddly enough, Palpatine as Chancellor was promising peace and security for everyone, and the people who Padme is like pretty much scoffing at and massively disappointed in, are clapping for their collective slavery. And it's like no different than the separatists getting chopped down by Vader, and it is different. It's not the same, but I mean, what happened after that moment, after the Galactic Empire started? What happened to everybody who was involved? All the Rebel Alliance had to happen, you know?
Mhm.
So how is it any different? How did the Republic or the Separatists, how are they any different? They wanted security, they wanted peace, and they all died with hope, like this misplaced, I need to make this very clear. Misplaced, um, you know, totally understandable, misplaced hope in the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Yep. No, I think that's 100% accurate. Like, the Separatists weren't, they're not, the twirly mustache villains. I mean, Dooku was a twirly mustache villain, but um, the even in the Clovis arc of the Clone Wars, it's like you do see this, like this a Separatist council member and a Republic senator, like saying like, we're gonna make this work. Like when they're on I can't remember, Scopulus or something, whatever the planet is where the Munes are. And it's like you have two people who are bitter rivalries in the midst of a very heated war, and they're like, let's make this work. It's like, and they say, like, they have their position, like, I hope your friend will make this work for us. And we see this throughout the Clone Wars, and we see this in the books a lot of the people of the Separatist Alliance and the systems that were governed by Separatists. They were not all bad people. And we see this, I think, a lot in the Clone Wars. The Separatists have their Liberty Dies moment early on in the Clone Wars, with Mina Bonteri. But yeah, it's just one of those things of like, it really does lead into what's about to happen. When we get kind of one of the last fight scenes of the movie. But after the Senate hearing and after the Galactic Empire is established, and Palpatine assumes control as the Grand Emperor, we kind of go back to Padme's estate. Obi-Wan is there, and this has sparked so many things of what was Obi-Wan doing with Padme during the Clone Wars when Anakin wasn't looking. Rumors. But something I wrote down is trauma acceptance and trauma dealing, and the differences between Obi-Wan and Padme. And a lot of people blame Padme as being like being manipulated or being naive, which I think is like the complete opposite of what was actually going on. I think, she's like, there's no way he could have done this. There's no way he could have done this. Obi-Wan has seen Anakin killing children through the hollows, and it's just one of those things of, I don't think Padme reacts poorly or any differently than if any of us, like, honestly, if we heard the news that one of us did the same thing, we went into like a kindergarten class with a broadsword, right? And it's like, you wouldn't believe that. Like, if someone said, hey, David went and did that, I'd be like, no, he didn't. That's impossible. And it's just one of those things. It's like, you have, like, Obi-Wan has no reason to lie to you. Padme has no reason to lie to Obi-Wan, and these mentalities are clashing because they don't know what to do with them. And I think this is like, this is one of the more sad scenes in the film. And I really think that her doing this and then her going to Mustafar, what she's about to do, it shows that she understood the Force, in my opinion, better than Anakin ever did. I really love how she did this, and I think Roddy had brought this up in the notes. But yeah, if you want to touch on that, Roddy. Or did we lose you again? But yeah.
Hey, yeah. So I love that you wrote down trauma acceptance, Obi versus Padme. I think it's like sort of a given because Obi-Wan had this duty to mentor Anakin through, even though he was a knight now, he still had this like, I taught this dude. you know, and I promised my master I would teach him. Look what's happening. I think that's somehow a heavier guilt and more traumatizing than Padme, who like heard him night after night having crazy nightmares. She knew his internal war, and I think that oddly, being so intimate with him and her maturity with her pure intentions, her balanced reason, and her detachment to his fate. She seemed to understand everyone's fates are in their own hands. She seemed to understand that.
Yep.
I think that difference, like intimacy in her principles, and Obi-Wan just simply like promising Qui-Gon that he would take care of this kid. That is like the why, I guess. But in terms of them as individuals, I think they both show strong abilities to like to withstand the pressure of what just happened. But Padme, I would say more so, go leaving the apartment, flying to Mustafar. It's all. I think Earth life now would call it really good intuition. But I mean, that's the Force right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of wonder what would have happened if she had been able to go by herself without Obi-Wan sneaking aboard.
Yeah, because before we get into that, I just wanted to say like I think the worst part about this scene is Obi-Wan and Padme's world has just crashed around them like completely.
Yeah.
Like in very different ways. Anakin was Obi-Wan's world, especially even with the Clone Wars. Satine is gone. Ahsoka is gone. All of his Jedi friends are gone. And now he's learned that Anakin is why all of his friends are gone. And the person that Padme trusted more than anyone in the Senate, more than anyone on Naboo, which is Anakin, he's gone and literally destroyed everything she's worked for. He destroyed it, and it's like everything that Obi-Wan had and everything that Padme had has now come crashing down because of Anakin, someone that was so connected to both of them. And it's like I don't think anyone could possibly imagine what that must feel like. But yeah, so Padme flies to Mustafar and confronts Anakin, and then like you said, David, Anakin sees Obi-Wan has snuck aboard, and he is standing there like arms akimbo, like, all right, buddy boy, you got some splaining to do. And that sets him off. And this is where the Duel of the Fates does show up in this film. This is where, he chokes Padme, who is getting ready to have their kid, first of all. And this leads up to the most iconic fight of Star Wars, I think, of all time at this point, is Anakin versus Obi-Wan. And I'll let you guys go first because there's a lot to unpack here.
It does cut away a lot because there's that fight, but then there's also Yoda versus the Emperor. And they still manage to have kind of a funny moment when Yoda says, not to have anything to say about it, I have, and then pushes him into the chair and he flips over. Like that's like a little dash of funny in a very serious moment. But they're also talking about, oh yeah, Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us. Like he truly believed that. So there's a lot of narrative, like that's the narrative side. When you get back to Anakin and Obi-Wan, who are just fighting and like pushing them into stuff. And it's every Star Wars fight is like all about the narrative, and it's very prevalent here. Yep,
every fight tells a story. Like kind of like even backtracking to the Wookiees versus the Separatists. There, it's less than a minute long, but there's a great story there. And this one, the story the one thing the two things I noticed, and it's really just the symbology that's going on within this fight with the lava erupting behind them. The two things I think is one is like a pretty obvious one is Palpatine is literally throwing away the Senate to get rid of the Jedi. He's and literal, like we see the literal taking the Senate seats and throwing them at the greatest Jedi of all time, or at least the greatest living Jedi at the moment. And like we see him literally throwing it all away. And then the other thing that I think is so the symbology of two blue lightsabers clashing together, which we've always known, and we even have interviews with George Lucas saying blue and green are good guys, red is the bad guys. And we have this moment where it is just two blue lightsabers going against each other. And this idea that if we're ever to believe that there's still good in Anakin, it is this moment when he still has his blue lightsaber. And he's fighting against Obi-Wan, who also has his blue lightsaber. And it's very simple, just the colored lightsaber. But I think the symbology of those two sabers, I think it's just on the cover of everything is those two blue lightsabers clashing in front of the red lava.
Yeah.
And the symbology of this is so good. But Roddy, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think that. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, I was getting a lot of buffering on my end. So
okay.
I think that like Palpatine and Yoda's fight symbolized where they both place their faith in terms of Force ideology. And through their discourse, but like Obi-Wan and Anakin, obviously, I mean, yeah, the blue on blue, very symbolic, and to me, I mean, it's cool because it shows how subtle a difference can be to be a difference enough. Like how small a difference can be to be difference enough. And what I mean is, like, literally at this point, the only things that Obi-Wan and Anakin fundamentally had different from each other was that Anakin was more close-minded and obsessed with things he can't control. Obi-Wan knew how to understand what's not in his control. He can't do anything about. Anakin stepped into a tyrant mentality. Obi-Wan was still curious and humble, and it's like these very small differences that do manifest as Sith Lord versus Jedi that are very interesting. And I think the blue on blue, like you said, with lava everywhere is a pretty cool representation of that.
And the one thing that I do want to touch on, and it's the one line of, like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. And what I think is so interesting about this line is, especially being on TikTok and just being exposed to so many different points of view so rapidly, is I noticed that a lot of people who leave a religion have what most people just call religious trauma. And I think it's so interesting that a lot of these people will go on social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube and villainize their previous religion. And a lot of times they have all of the reason in the world to no longer trust or believe in what they used to believe. But when we look at the grand scheme of things, like let's say someone leaves Christianity, 99.999% of people who have that religion are good people. Like we see on the news, all of the bad eggs, right? There's people who just say, this is what I believe. This is how I am. I just want to be good. I want to protect light and life, basically. But yet when you leave that, when you have that experience or you have that outside manipulation to pull you away from that, you will have that like antagonistic view of that religion. And we have this happening with Anakin is they never trusted me. I did everything they asked me to. It was never good enough. and they manipulated me. They sent me to war. I won all their battles, and they never let me be my own person. He's probably at this point thinking they took me from my mother. I could have, if I never left Tatooine, she would have never died the way she did. All this is probably going through his mind, and he's going to be blaming the Jedi Order as that dogmatic religious thing that Palpatine is now saying is what happened to him. And I think it's so interesting seeing that, like, now kind of being aware of like all those, a lot of people who probably do feel the same. And we get nowadays all these people that really relate to Anakin, and I think for the wrong reasons. There's a lot to relate to Anakin, but we get a lot of these people that are just like they grab onto him for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, Anakin is a cautionary tale, which I think a lot of
Yes.
people forget. Because I like Anakin the character, like, in the Clone Wars era, in building up in the prequels, but then he, because of several factors, he turns to the dark side, and then he does some really big atrocities that part should not be idolized the way I've seen.
He has this Joker effect almost, where there's a lot to love about the character, but you're clinging on to the parts you're not supposed to cling on to. You're supposed to cling on to this aspirational, peace-loving person, the person who will do anything for his friends, will do anything for his Padawan, will do anything for his wife. These are the great things about Anakin Skywalker. There's so much to love and respect about his character, but so many people just gravitate towards this last half of this one movie, and the 80 hours of content we have just visually with Anakin, not to mention the books and the comics and all of that. There's so much more to Anakin than that, and it's like it's the Joker effect, it's the Revan effect. There's so much more to these characters that I always joke that it's the literal Sith propaganda working in real life, that causes a lot of people to. I've done a handful of videos on this on TikTok where I just talk about Anakin, again, being a great character, but just like y'all missed the point. You did not understand the assignment.
I think that the appeal, similarly, I hear you. Similarly to why Anakin appealed with Palpatine's temptations, is because the Sith fundamentally put almost all of their emphasis on free will of the user in disregard to literally anything else that exists, unless it's in accordance to what they want. And that could mean being a tyrant of the entire Republic and turning it into the Galactic Empire. So, like, I understand why, like, that's the thing. You can understand, but understand it's also not probably the best thing to do.
Yep.
It's like the disgust with religious dogmatism is real.
Yeah.
But like, the thing is that the good part of religion was structure and also observing everyone as something you should probably respect. And then, of course, Palpatines have infiltrated Jedi-like institutions in the world. So it's like this weird situation where we have ForwardIntoTheBlack making videos saying, like, maybe you shouldn't identify with Anakin Skywalker falling to become Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's like not. It's also the thing where you don't want to tell people what to do and what not to do, and that happens to be something that aligns with utter neutrality, or let people step into chaos if they want. And I think partially an aspect of what Yoda did was he let it happen. But he could. What else could he do? He can't do anything else. He's trying to fight Palpatine.
He's not in control at this point, and he does lose that battle against Palpatine. But yeah, I think well, before we move on to the next part, I would just say, kind of like on that last little Anakin thing, is, David, you're 100% right. It's a cautionary tale. But the people that I've noticed that gravitate towards that last act of Anakin Skywalker are the people who are just as vulnerable as Anakin Skywalker is. These are people that, from my observation, and anyone who's watching this now or is watching the VOD, the vulnerable people are, people that maybe feel isolated in their life, maybe that no one understands them or respects them, or that their point of view is not being heard. And that's why they gravitate towards these characters. They gravitate towards the dark side of Anakin Skywalker. They gravitate towards the Joker, because they're not being heard in one way or another. And I in some ways will antagonize a certain demographic of them. And I always say, like, oh, you live you're forever alone type of people. And to me there's more nuance to that. Like, oh, I mean, me and you, I know, have been in those comment wars and been victim of some severe cyberbullying. But it's one of those things, like, I think there is more nuance. When I say, like, oh yeah, you're going to be forever alone, it's like, oh yeah, he says whatever, I got a wife and 2 kids, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's more to it than that, buddy. That doesn't mean anything. It's like, I have a feeling your wife probably hates you.
There's more than one type.
Yes. It's hey, only a Sith deals in absolutes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the ultimate absolute that anyone can fall prey to is caring too much about anything.
Yeah.
And like that's what to me creates these fear-based emotional attachments that and people in Anakin's mind superseded any reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, I've fallen prey to those before, and I've had to pull myself myself back to reason, like a freaking war. So it's like, it's not easy. And like, I know, Chase, when you do it on TikTok, you're doing it with humor and love and honesty, because this shit's real. And like, Anakin is cautionary tale. That's the best way to put it. Really.
Yeah.
Best way to put it.
Yeah, it is one of those things of, like, we've all had our dark chapters in life. We've all, whether that was an external situation or an internal situation, we've all had those dark chapters, and how we move past those chapters is what makes us who we are. And again, Anakin, like, chose the worst possible path, and yeah, like, can't be said enough. It is the cautionary tale, but this does lead us to the end of the movie, where Obi-Wan does defeat. And I think it's very interesting. Obi-Wan defeats Anakin, and Palpatine defeats Yoda, and we have this non-resolution. And it's one of the things, like, when I talk to people, like when I'm having a serious conversation with someone, verbally or on the internet, it always bothers me having non-resolution. When it's just like the agree to disagree, and I'm like, I can't stand that. Yeah. I don't think you're giving up. And this is what happens: is we have a non-resolution. Like, Obi-Wan beats Anakin, but did he win? No, he didn't win. He's lost everything. Palpatine defeats Yoda, but he didn't kill Yoda. Yoda got away. So we have this: the bad guys have both won and lost at the same time. And this scene that follows this, when Padme is taken to the medical facility off of Mustafar, and Palpatine brings Anakin. I can't remember where he takes him, but to the facility to build Darth Vader. And we have the dual birth. We have the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader, being truly born. And we have the new hope of the galaxy, Luke and Leia Skywalker, being born at the same time. And we do see the true death. If we're going to split these people up, we see the death of Anakin Skywalker and the death of Padme Amidala at the same time, which is like, if we can ignore the no, the infamous no, this is, to me, one of the greatest scenes of Star Wars, is Luke and Leia being born alongside their father. It's such a powerful moment that is a little bit ruined. Thanks, George Lucas. But yeah, I feel like there's also a lot to unpack in this scene as well. If you guys want to.
They actually added that no to Return of the Jedi now too.
I know, and I hate it. I hate it so much.
It also used to be my alarm clock for years. Like I would wake up to no.
No.
I did not know that was added in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little bit different because he goes no, and then grabs him, but it's still
Yeah,
same
when
principle.
he's throwing Palpatine, he's scared that Luke is dying from Palpatine, and he goes, "No!" And I'm like, "No! Get rid of it!"
Now, as much as like I still think Padme should have lived through that encounter, I really think that they could have pulled that off. It is poetic how they both kind of die in that instance.
It's poetic. It's convenient writing, is what I will call it, because we would have the questions of where is Padme Amidala during the Age of the Rebellion, because she starts the rebellion. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Padme Amidala started the rebellion, and Padme Amidala's death. And oh my God, watching it this time, watching that casket hover, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. I don't
Yeah.
like watching this. This is
Before seeing it for the first time in theaters, somebody showed me like a visual dictionary picture because they always release those before the movie. Someone's like, "Hey, look at this picture of Padme, and it's her in the casket." And I was holding out hope that they would like not do that, but I was like, I got so angry at him, like, "No, why did you show me that?" It's like, "Well, I thought it would be obvious." Like, no, it wasn't to me.
Yeah, it's okay. I had the same reaction to Rogue One, where it was just like everyone's like, logically, all those characters are gonna die, but you're just like, no, they could live. I'll do the mental gymnastics. I'll make them live.
Yeah.
And it is like that is one of those things. Like, could they have made Padme live? Yes, I 100% I think they could have made Padme live, and it's just like that could have been one of those things of she could have said, "I'll come back when the time is right," something like that, and maybe it was right when the rebellion had finally won is when she'll come back. But I don't know, Rod. This is the end of the movie. I mean, Roddy, do you have any?
I think I'll say two things. First off, I think Padme very reasonably could have truthfully lost the will to live after the events that transpired to her independent world of Naboo. Like it's sort of the guilt of being duped by Palpatine, also being like groomed into queenhood and then into the Senate and stuff with this dude who she never trusted in the first place. That in her head, her homeworld getting just like distorted beyond belief. Then the whole entire Republic falling, Liberty dying with thunderous applause, not to mention Anakin. I mean, it's like, I don't know what happens specifically when someone loses the will to live in Star Wars like that. Like, did she pass on some of her strength to Leia and Luke? Was she just done? She just chose to be done. I don't know. But like when I do sit with what she observed, I don't condone or I don't promote giving up, but dude, I understand. And then with you got something to say about that?
It was just honestly to tack on that. A lot of people say like, "Oh, Padme died from a broken heart." I'm like, that is not at all what happens.
No.
I think the line, no matter what we're doing, she's just lost the will to live. I think in my notes I just have like in all caps like Padme deserves better, and not even if that like she should live. Like David, I'm with you. I think she should live, but like going through what Padme went through, going through what Obi-Wan went through, like those are things that I think almost anyone just could not bear as a person. Like the stuff that they endured is just awful. And yeah, it's like losing the will to live. It's just like, what's the, having that point of like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Raising the children would be your only, only way forward, but it's just like these children are the seeds of the dark side, and one facet of it, is probably what's going through her head. You can go a lot of dark avenues, I think, in that mentality, but
there's a whole new everyone has felt some level of like depression, but with what Padme went through is like a whole new layer of it that is just unfathomable, and it especially in this fictional setting with like the Force and space wizards, it is totally plausible to say, oh yeah, she lost the will to live because a lot of stuff just happened to her in a short amount of time. Lots of trauma.
Padme is stronger than basically every Jedi and Sith, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the things, like it's when we stop looking at power scaling and stuff like that, like how strong I think both Padme and Obi-Wan Kenobi are, is immeasurable, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, the end of the movie is we have Leia going to the Organa family, and we see her going to Alderaan. And then the film ends with Obi-Wan Kenobi delivering Luke Skywalker to the Lars homestead. And it's like, oh my god. Oh, that's like a tough, somewhere like A New Hope is like my comfort movie, and watching like Owen Lars, the same spot under the setting twin suns, it's just like, oh man. And then credits roll, and you're like, oh man. Oh, it is such a beautiful way to wrap that movie up, in my opinion. We get to see Alderaan. We finally get to see the beautiful place that was destroyed by the Empire, and we see where the film ends is kind of where the next movie begins. So I think it's just I think just that whole last act of that film is like.
Yeah, and I had said earlier that I don't necessarily like, this isn't my first choice to watch, just because it's not like anything triggering. It's just because I don't like being sad. A lot of this movie makes me sad because a lot of bad stuff.
I'm the same way, but with Rogue One.
See, Rogue One is my number 2 movie, and I can't figure out why, because it's the same. There's a lot of sad stuff that happens there too. It's
the movie that I want to watch basically every day when I get home, but I'm like, I'm not emotionally ready to watch this right now. But yeah, no, this film is tough to get through in a good way. In a way, I think a lot of people will say, like, we rewatched the Clone Wars, and I had a fantastic time with that movie. And I think people say that movie's tough to get through in a bad way. This movie, and I think Rogue One, are tough to get through in a good way. But yeah. Any final thoughts on the film as a whole before we kind of break down the favorites and least favorites and lessons and all that?
Not on my end.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, we'll kind of just go through, I think, kind of like the more happy stuff. Who's your favorite? Let's go around. Who's your favorite character of this film?
Probably Obi-Wan. Yeah.
Roddy, how about you? Who's your favorite character?
If I had to choose, I would choose Obi-Wan.
We're 3 for 3 on Obi-Wan. This is Obi-Wan's movie. He's so good. Favorite vehicle in this film?
Padme stuff.
Yeah, Padme has I have in my notes, Padme has the coolest collection of ships of all time. Her new cruiser is really cool.
I feel like I'd be basic, but I'm gonna pick the Jedi Starfighter.
Yeah, ETA 2, I think is what they're called. That was mine, but I'm gonna be rose tinted glasses. Tantive 4. Tantive 4 is my favorite vehicle in this movie. What's your favorite planet that we go to?
Alderaan.
That's a good choice. That's a really
Utapau.
good choice. I'm gonna go. I will actually go Utapau, but yeah, Alderon's a really good choice. And what's your favorite scene of this movie?
Anakin walking up the steps. Yeah.
What about you, Roddy? There's a lot of scenes. Like
Yeah.
this breakdown is 3 pages. The Attack of the Clones was like 2 pages, like a page and a half, basically.
You know, I'm gonna have to go with when Anakin learns about Palpatine being Sith Lord for the first time, and Palpatine is goading him. The part we talked about regarding the dogma and blah,
Yeah,
all that.
the
I'll
Sidious's
say
reveal.
why, and simply because I do think that there's a lot people can learn about in that scene alone about manipulators
Mhm.
and how to stand your ground.
Yeah, I like that scene. My scene is pretty much right after that. My favorite scene in this movie is Mace Windu versus Palpatine. I think there's a lot going. I think there's a lot going on in that scene. I think there's a lot of misinterpretation in that scene, but there's also so much interpretation to be had in that scene. And just seeing how Mace Windu is such a badass. But who's everyone's least favorite character?
Dooku, because he didn't. He's gone so quick. I don't know.
Dooku done dirty. That's fair.
I think Grievous for the same reason.
I'll go with Grievous as well. Grievous is a character who could be really cool, but is really not in this movie for me. I think the fight with Grievous is really cool. I think from a I am having a good time while watching the movie. He does a great job, but as far as I want to think about this movie, he's not there. Like Maul and Dooku definitely have a lot going on. We explore that later on in external media, but yeah, Grievous doesn't really have anything going on. Least favorite planet.
Least favorite?
Least favorite planet. Least favorite place we go.
I would say Mustafar only because it looks cool, but living in Florida, it just makes me feel like it's got to be really hot there. I hate that.
Roddy, what about you? I mean, you're in Georgia. You're right above him.
Mustafar? Yeah.
We're gonna have a 3 for 3 on this one, Mustafar, and I'm gonna be just nitpicky and say no one's clothes caught on fire when they're 6 inches away from the lava. It's great image wise, it's great allegory wise, it's great metaphorically. Everything about that is great. It makes 0 sense, and I know Star Wars doesn't make sense, but this is just my one time to be nitpicky. And what's everyone's least favorite vehicle?
Everything that's not Padme's stuff.
That's fair.
Man. I think I'm gonna go with Grievous's little rolly transport thing.
Okay, I was gonna say if you say his starship, I'm gonna be like, really? I think
No,
so.
that
That's the wheel. The wheel.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of cool, but then in concept you're like, okay, so it's got legs now. He's jumping on stuff.
I would say if it didn't have the dinky little legs, it'd be a top tier vehicle. But because it has the dinky little legs, I'm like, no, man, that's bad. What's the least favorite scene of this movie?
I'm just gonna on a whim, whatever. When Mace Windu lets Anakin go create whatever ideas he wants on his own, come back and ruin Mace's plan.
Yeah.
I just disagree with that. I typically don't care about disagreements, but that's my least favorite one.
There's like 2 or 3 scenes where Anakin does this, but every time that Anakin and Padme are talking about his dream, and she's trying to tell him, no, it's okay, and he's like, no, I'm gonna save you. Like, those always, like, Anakin, shut up. Like, any one of those scenes you can pick, and I was just, that's probably my least favorite.
Yeah, cringe factor, David.
I will say, kind of
I hear you.
going to the just Dooku being dispatched super early. And also, I watched a video, someone breaking down like how they screwed up the choreography really bad in that scene, where they're posing, waiting for someone to yell action, and you can see it in the cuts.
It's so much worse.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, like I think just like it's like, I want more of Count Dooku, and seeing him dispatched so early, like, is a disappointment.
Have you read Jedi Lost or Master and Apprentice?
No, I haven't.
He's in both.
I took a break from Jedi books. Outside of like the High Republic stuff, I've been doing like trying to read more stuff like I read the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, been rereading X-Wing, and I just got Outbound Flight. So I've been trying to get more into the I spent like years reading Force books that I was like, I need to take a break and just read stuff that is fun and doesn't make me think too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is the lesson that you think you learned, or people should learn? Because I'm going to throw that as an option as well from this movie.
So mine would have to be 100,000 trillion infinity%. The importance, it's layered. The importance of not making assumptions or holding expectations, but specifically caring too much about things beyond your control.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, David?
Yeah, that's about the same vein. Like, when Yoda says, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Just, live your life. Don't worry about like you were saying, don't worry about things beyond your control, because you can't change it. Just learn to adapt.
Yeah. For me, and maybe this is a little bit of a cop-out, the lesson I learned from this was the Jedi were right. And, not to form attachments, not to be selfish. All of the lessons they taught that people, again, would say, oh, it's too dogmatic, and like, they were right. What happened to Anakin Skywalker was preventable. He did not follow the Jedi teachings. He knew then it was 100% preventable, and he screwed it up. But I know there's people that disagree. Anakin did nothing wrong. Camp, sorry, that's incorrect. It's one of those things, like, are the Jedi perfect? No. Were they right? Yes. And that's kind of the lesson I took away from this one. But yeah, that is the end of the prequel trilogy. And I know, David, you weren't here for 1 and 2, but where does it sit for you? Like, as far as the prequel, as far as the trilogies go, we have the prequels, the originals, and the sequels. Like, how do you feel about the prequel trilogy as a whole, rewatching it? I don't know, David, if you've rewatched 1 and 2. I think we watched 2 together when we did it in the Discord.
I know I've seen 2 very recently. I'm not sure if it was here or just like on my own, maybe both, because I actually think, especially coming across people that feel the same way, I am more comfortable now saying that I think Episode 2 is my favorite prequel movie.
Okay.
And I know that's not a very popular opinion, but it's like there's a lot of stuff that I resonate with in that movie.
Yep.
And I think Episode 1 is probably the most pivotal, the most important Star Wars, because a lot of stuff gets set in motion.
Yes.
And I like it. Yeah, I like it.
Roddy, like, after rewatching 1, 2, and 3 recently this year, have you changed? Is something new you feel about the prequels?
Well, I think when we met, like
Mhm.
actually met for the first time ever, Chase, I think I was a prequel fanboy.
Yeah.
I think
No, we
like I was
bonded over the
obsessed.
fact that we were in prequel hate when we met, and it was like, yeah, no, the prequels were sick,
Yes,
and
exactly. That quickly shifted to sequel hate.
yeah, we're
So
still on that.
my love for the prequels remains the same. My
Mhm.
understanding of what they are about has evolved, but I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna go based off overall enjoyment. I think I used to be a huge Episode Two protector, because
Mhm.
people like really don't like Episode Two. I still love it, but I've changed a lot actually. My basic enjoyment factor would be from most to least. I don't know if you asked for our ranking. I'm just going on a tangent.
Yeah.
Would be honestly 1, 3, 2. Like Phantom
Okay.
Menace, most enjoyment. Revenge of the Sith, second most. Attack of Clones, third most. But I mean, like, I don't like rankings and favorites. I partake in them because they're fun.
Yeah, they're
But like
fun.
at the end of the day, I do think it's overall the prequel trilogy, original trilogy, sequel trilogy. It like they're so vital in accordance and in relation to each other that it's like I had to break out of this idea of not even taking the time to do a ranking. But
Yeah.
they're all so great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
but I don't know if that's a non-answer at the end of my
No,
answer, but
that's totally yeah, that's an answer because mine is basically pretty similar to yours. Is like I love the sequels. I've bonded with people over the sequels. The prequels. I've fought with people over the prequels. And rewatching them, especially after the sequels, um, I still put my order is originals, sequels, prequels. Even still, my ranking of the prequels has changed. Mine used to be 1, 3, 2, similar how yours is. Mine is now 1, 2, 3. Um, where Phantom Menace is another comfort movie for me, and like you said, David, it's the most important Star Wars movie, and so I will always love it for that. But yeah, it's watching this movie by itself was like really good. I got more out of this watch through than I think I've ever gotten out of the prequels before. So I have a much larger appreciation for them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that about wraps it up um, for the prequels. I mean, does anyone have any other thoughts they want to kind of add to Revenge of the Sith or the prequels in general?
I would say Revenge of the Sith. If people are Anakin lovers and you don't understand why, like, we're saying he's a cautionary tale and not to fanboy him, don't feel attacked by that sentiment. It's like I think we all agreed we've been through shit. Anakin's been through things not because it's bad. I just don't want to say that. Been through things Anakin's been through, and
Yep.
it's fine. And at the end of the day, uh, as with Star Wars enjoyment, take it easy, but like maintain reason. And with life itself, like take it easy and maintain reason too. I like this prequel segment, and all I gotta say to finalize my part is it's been really cool having. It's cool to have you on the council as like a member, Dave. I feel goofy saying that, but I love it. It's cool. It's fun. It's good to have you, man.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to be here. I love doing this kind of stuff. When I join like TikTok and stuff, it's really refreshing to find a lot of people that are so into this as much as I am, and we can like talk about the same kind of stuff. I never actually had that like till I don't know a year ago.
Yeah, there was a moment in time. I think Roddy. It was just the only person I could ever talk to about Star Wars was you. Uh, and like anytime I was talking about Star Wars to anyone else, it was combative. Of
Mhm.
like, no, the prequels are secret really, really good. Like, there's a lot of depth in there, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, no, they're the worst things ever. Like George Lucas has lost his mind, blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, look at where we are now. But yeah, it is so cool to have like a community. It's so cool to have like just 3 people that like can just like go off together for 3 hours about a 2-hour film. In a positive light, mind you, because there's plenty of like 4-hour critiques of prequel and sequel movies that are just bashing on them for hours on end. But yeah, no, I think that's a good note to end on. So let's just outroductions. David, where can we find you?
I am Xanatos1138 on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. If you would like, I'm trying to get back into that. But anywhere there is social media, that is my name, and mostly on TikTok. So go ahead and follow me there if you'd like.
Awesome. Roddy, where are you at?
Higo Damask 27 on YouTube. The profile banner will have my Twitch and Instagram link.
Nice. And yeah, you can follow me at ForwardIntoTheBlack. If I could even get my name. You want to know a fun fact? I misspelled my name on TikTok when I first created it and didn't realize it for a month. I was forward into the black. And like Randy, one of our mutual friends, was like, "Yeah, I can't find your TikTok," and he's like, "You misspelled your TikTok," and I was like, "What are you talking?" Oh my god,
that's good. That's funny. That's awesome.
So yeah, you can find me at Forward Into the Black. You will find us here pretty regularly. Maybe not this next Sunday, but the Sunday after. I've got a few ideas that we'll probably bounce off and get going. And then again, next time we will be talking about a movie. It will be Solo, as it is the next film in the timeline. This will be my 3rd time watching the film. I'm really excited, and we're going to be doing this first Sunday of every month is when we'll be talking as the 3 of us about Star Wars movies until we get to Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for everyone who hung out with us in both the TikTok Live and on YouTube and Twitch. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you.
Force be with you.
All right.